Hi, everyone. Sorry for that truncated introductory music. That's what happens when you do a sound check and you forget to actually skip the track back. So, uh, glad you could join us for what is actually the 14th episode of The Race That Decides. And it's hard to believe this is actually my second time at covering the WA state election. So, yeah, we have been doing the racer for quite a while now. I was supposed to be joined by Nolsey, so if anyone out there is able to contact him, give him a good jab in the ribs for me, and tell him that he's bludging and he should be here right now. But in his place, we are happy to have Kyber Mace. How you going?
Happy to be here. Happy to have gotten the voting out of the way.
Oh yeah, so I went in there today. I had to work, unfortunately, on a bloody Saturday. And then I went straight to the primary school, and holy shit, man, it doesn't take long at all for them to just swarm on you like flies on a cow shit,
Yep.
like with all the how to vote cards and all that. Um,
That drives
but
me bonkers too.
I mean, look, I'm interested in it. I mean, like I even took one from the Greens, just because I'm always curious to know, like, how did they actually
hmm
um, allocate their preferences? And it's funny in the seat that I'm in. I won't say what it is, but there was like a really kind of quirky independent candidate, and pretty much everyone put him last. Uh, and I looked him up, and he was like basically an anti-vaxer. He wants to bring back like hard money in Australia, like either the gold standard or something similar to that. So ideas that are pretty out there, I'd say, don't
Mm.
exactly fit within the discourse of usual WA politics. But um, yeah, I mean, in the lower house, uh, actually, no, I won't say who I voted for. I'll say I put the Greens last um, and Labor second last, as I have done for
Yep.
the past few elections that I've done. In the upper house, again, like even though usually you get a whole heap of alternatives there really wasn't anything. I mean, maybe there was an independent that was below the line, but I wasn't aware of one that, say, would identify as a nationalist. But, previously you did have the option of Australia First or Australian Protectionist Party, something like that. Uh, but we just didn't get that at all in the ballot. You notice that?
Yeah, there was only like four for the Senate, and I'm thinking, okay, that's the big four parties that you would expect, but bloody oath, the House of Representatives. I'm a autistic spastic at the best of times, and I numbered all 144 boxes. I think it was.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Fuck me. I swear the last time I did this, it was only 77. So it's like the numbers, yeah, 70 to 144. They doubled the number of candidates. So it's like from drought to feast in terms of like one sheet was this tiny little, four ticks and you're done, or four numbers and you're done. Whereas the other, yeah, there's something to be said for too many candidates out there. And if I can pontificate just quickly on something that I noticed with regards to I won't obviously name exactly where I was, but it was in obviously some part of WA. The fact was that the Labor Party had bloody oath, I would say upwards of 30 members. I'm just going, anything more than four, it's just like, okay, maybe I'm showing my profound fucking ignorance here because the House of Reps, the lower house, it's meant to be proportional based upon the population count, but running 30 members in a particular zone, but every other party, maybe they capped out at 12 or 14, which is still, I don't know what the exact ratios and numbers are, but for a country of only, what are we, 27 million for Australia as a whole, then the population of WA is what, 5, 6 mil? Help me out here,
Yeah,
Fenian.
something. You don't make up
So
much of it.
the point that I'm drawing towards here is that if you're doing representative democracy, like maybe I'm, they obviously all won't go through, I think, but there should be not only limits on like micro parties, because 2/3 of the page was just, I don't even know who the hell these clowns are. I don't know what they actually do. But there should also be like a limit, some sanity checks on how many candidates you're allowed to run, because I don't see how the Labor Party thought it was, let's just flood the zone type tactics where you've got that many boxes, because I do understand the fatigue element, probably more than most. You want to make the most out of your snotty little vote. You want to number all the boxes just because it's going to make life hell for whoever has to count them. But having to do 144 numbers, it's like, it felt like a fucking exam.
Yeah, well, if you did everything below the line, that's
Of course.
yeah. I have done that before. This time, I'm sorry to say, I just didn't have the patience for it.
And that's
So
that's the penultimate argument is no one who's a healthy, well-adjusted individual has the time or patience for that. And I think it's almost a spoiler effect where people just shrug their shoulders and go, fuck it, number one nation, liberals, or whatever it is else you're voting, rather than taking the opportunity to vote on a per candidate basis and just fuck with the system like that.
did you see that there was this one party called Stop Pedophiles, Protect Kitties?
Yeah. I saw that and wondered, well, it's another one issue party. Granted, I have absolutely no problem with that as a platform. I think that's more than just noble. It's sort of mandatory, I suppose. But it's sort of like, how did I not hear about that until today?
Yeah, and they even had explanation marks in the title, like "Stop Pedophiles!" exclamation mark, "Protect Kitties!" exclamation mark. Like, I suppose you're able to register punctuation in your title as well.
Yeah. I wonder if you can get away with
But yeah,
registering a party
there was a
that's
lot of the
just
usual stuff.
punctuation.
I mean, when it comes to minor or micro parties, the left really has that covered. They have like the legalized cannabis party, animal justice, all that kind of stuff. When it comes to the more populist right parties, uh, none of them are nationalist. Like, you've got ones that are a bit against the grain. You could say that they're part of the dissident right, or even the old right, or the alt right, to use some slightly dated
Fairly
terminology.
antiquated
But
terms.
yeah, so like the shooters and fishers, a couple of the independent candidates, but that's it. I mean, yeah, like I said before, like no Australia First, no Australian Protectionist Party, and so guys like us, we're always left to be wondering, like, okay, which one do I hate the least? Not which one do I support, but which one do I actually hate the least? That's the way I approach
Yeah,
those ballots
same.
anyway. Yeah, which is a real shame. Okay, guys. Well, look, we'll try and give you updates in terms of how the count is looking as we go through this stream. Polls only actually closed half an hour ago. So if you're listening outside WA, it's just going 6:30 p.m. right now, and we're certainly out of the time zone of everyone in Australia. We're very unique, aren't we, in WA?
Special
And we
would be the word
we're
normally
special.
use.
You use the term special. Okay. Well, no, but I mean, we are. I mean, we were the one country that actually voted. I mean, one country. We voted to be one country. We did actually vote to secede. And if I remember correctly, that was just basically a violation of the Australian Constitution, and we couldn't do it. But, one of the big reasons for that is the fact that we have this resources powerhouse, particularly in the Northwest, that, for example, funds almost 50% of Australia's entire GST revenue. And other states still complain that we take too much of it, even though we actually pay a whoppingly disproportionate amount compared to what we get. So it's always I always wonder, like what what would it have been if we did actually secede from the rest of Australia and we became Westralia or whatever it might have been? I mean, do you think we could have actually crafted our own unique form of nationalism and
Australia,
maybe
Arnold.
white nationalism in Westralia?
It's, I think it's more plausible than we give the idea credit, because consider how actually very unique the condition of Australia is, that we have the largest government, the single government on a contiguous landmass. Almost every other landmass has multiple sovereign nations to it. So, frankly, it would have been more to the overall trend if, you know, Australia had seceded and done its own thing. Um, Obviously, the easy comparison is a US Canada style arrangement, where there's sort of a, okay, you're guarding that portion of the borders, we'll guard this, we'll have easy um, border crossings for, as far as visa-free travel is concerned. There'd be a fair amount of cross-border trade. Foreign policy would be sort of, you know, double check what the other side is doing. Again, I'm just cribbing literally from, you look at how the United States and Canada work. And I think a large portion of why that works for them is that they have a common language, they have sort of a common founding mythos. Obviously, the myths themselves are different, but they were, you know, jointly, or rather, they were carved from the same block of wood. So the extent to which WA would be different is, you know, arguably be no different than what it is right now, because how much more different are us sand gropers compared to those eastern weirdos? And I'm sure they have exactly the same attitude back towards us. And I think in many respects, we kind of are our own, you know, just the distance between east and west sides of Australia. It's like, you know, we're functionally there. And if it wasn't for the overbearing federal government, we would effectively be a state of our own. We may not necessarily have, we'd probably have more of a standing army, and that would probably be where you would see some differences emerge. But it's, you know,
Yeah,
back of a postage stamp, or back of a napkin level differences of, okay, we have to raise our own army, we have to put a bit more effort into diplomatic missions, and occasionally we would get to sell iron ore at different prices to whoever the hell's buying. Um, that's as much as I could reasonably predict off the top of my head. I suppose the final question that minds better than me could ask would be, to what extent would China play off Westralia versus the eastern states? Because I think that would be another differentiating point. I mean, again, I can't really point to any geopolitical history that would sort of give rise to that idea, but consider how Canada, funnily enough, and it's not very well known, they have a huge mineral oil sector. And obviously they sell oil to whoever the hell buys, but obviously they pay a certain amount of deference to, okay, we're not going to sell oil to regimes that are hostile to the US. But, you know, every so often when you feel like making a racket, you say, actually, we're going to loosen trade restrictions with some other nations that's been greedily eyeing off the mineral resources, as a way of pissing off Washington or Canberra. That would be sort of the other major difference, is that maybe we
yeah,
would be a bit more independent minded if we truly were our own first class nation.
right. And I mean, another thing that I always wonder is, you know, obviously in the case of us becoming our own country, you know, we may have actually opted for our own federation, where we the regions of WA would actually become the states. And in that case, like, here's one of the things that appeals to me the most about that idea is that the whole idea of the FIFO worker probably never would have come into existence. You know, like these places where we send our miners to go for 14 days and then come back, uh, they would actually develop as their own cities, where they hired a local workforce. You know, instead we have nothing like that. We've got Perth, which is the absolute vast majority of WA, and then we just have like little sprinkles of population like throughout the rest of the state. And you know, the further north you go, kind of the less there is. Um, I think, you know, if we had actually gone it alone, like that wouldn't be the case now. You know, we would have like a much better even distribution, and we would have some, you know, other major cities as well. I mean, uh, I've heard it floated like some people say, like we could turn the northwest of Australia into like little Dubai's. Um, hopefully, we
Ooh.
wouldn't. Hopefully, we wouldn't quite run them in the same way. But what it means is, metropolises in the desert, or what is basically desert up there, and I see no reason why that couldn't have worked. And I mean, any country after a while is going to uh, take its own form of identity. So I think we would. Uh, would still be very similar, obviously, to the rest of Australia. But then again, I might cause offence saying this, but I don't think culturally we're very different from New Zealand, for example.
Mm.
And New Zealand was actually going to be the seventh state of Australia. That was the way they originally planned federation, and that just wasn't to be. But if it did, well, the worst thing about that would have been all the Maoris that would be able to freely travel to and fro. But it wouldn't have been a bad idea. Um, but talking also about like a former premier of ours, Colin Barnett. He was the Liberal Premier for 2 terms, the last Liberal Premier we had. He, like years and years back when he was opposition leader, uh, he proposed what was called the Kimberley to Perth Canal. Do you remember this idea, Kaiba?
That
What this
kind
was
of
about?
rings a bell. And I absolutely support that idea. A quick bit
Yeah.
of NS deep law knowledge. When the National Socialists were captured, of the National Socialists who were captured and were interned in the Nuremberg prisons awaiting trial and sentencing, the Nazis passed the time chatting amongst themselves and through the prison cells and walls, arguing and squabbling over what was the more economical form of transport, whether it was rail or canals. So make of that what you will. So, but yeah, it's one of those things that it's fascinating in hindsight to think of all the extra shit that could have been done if we were sort of
Yes.
more bold and
No, I think
courageous. Yeah,
I
go on.
mean, back when this happened, or when it was being proposed. I mean, I think I was still a teenager. Actually, it's going back a while now. But I don't know if you remember this. Everyone like basically jumped on it and said it was a retarded idea. They said it was just like it was uncosted, and if we did build it, there'll be blowouts. It wouldn't work. Um, but look, for those who don't know, haven't heard about this, there's actually a Wikipedia article on the idea. Um, it was going to channel water from the Fitzroy River in the Kimberley all the way to the Pilbara to Perth. So we're talking about a canal actually 3,700 kilometres. So an enormous amount. And obviously, because it was carrying water, water is very heavy. So this was going to be, quite a piece of infrastructure, and it was estimated that it would cost around about $2 billion. And yes, fair enough. As government infrastructure projects usually go, there are cost blowouts, but certainly no more than your average green energy project, which as we know, always are way way more expensive. But yeah, what kind of went wrong here was I remember that at the time Peter Costello, the federal treasurer, he made a really silly comment actually, where he said that the project was uncosted and he would not be drawn on whether or not it was a good idea. And it was actually this idea alone, the Kimberley to Perth Canal, that basically tanked Colin Barnett's uh, leadership back then. So that was when he went up against Jeff Gallop, and he lost. And everyone said, yeah, like this was the major failure, was this project. But let's think about if this was actually built. Um, Colin Barnett said that, look, the reason why we've got to do this is because the rest of Western Australia is extremely lacking in infrastructure, you know, and obviously you've got to guarantee a water supply to be able to settle people within these areas. That's just the beginning of it, and then obviously there's other things like power and roads and what else. But you have to have that foundation of providing water. And he said, look, if we do that, will actually encourage people to move to these more regional areas of WA. And we might actually look a little bit how Westralia would have looked. Now, when he lost that election, he, I think he just went to the backbench. And that was when, do you remember we got Matt Birney, then we had Paul Omaday, and then we had Troy Buswell. Now, Troy Buswell, of course, was the most
Notorious
entertaining
seat sniffer.
of the lot, who, yes, got in trouble for sniffing a female seat. Apparently, like, he picked it up and started, like, smelling it and making, like, like sexual noises. And he also got, like, drunk in Parliament and snapped someone's bra. And there's a whole heap of other shit too, if you want to read into that. But anyway, when Colin Barnett was on the backbench, he defended the Kimberley to Perth Canal. He said, "No, I still think it was a good idea." And then he said something that really made me think. This has stayed with me all these years later. He said, "What if we just leave the northwest of Australia essentially unpopulated, as it still is now?" Well, our closest neighbour is Indonesia, who are very, very overpopulated. Maybe one day they'll say, "Hey, you've got all of this empty land. You're doing nothing with it. We don't have any space to put our people. We think we want that, and we're going to settle them there." And it may not even be Indonesia, okay? It could be China further down the road. You know, we always talk about them as an emerging superpower. I think they already are a superpower. Obviously not militarily like the Americans are, but they are gaining enormous influence now in the Pacific, and it might sound far fetched, but I would say that an Asian power invading Australia and populating the Northwest is something that could well happen within our lives. I know that sounds a little crazy to some people, but yeah, I mean, Colin Barnett was actually someone who agreed on that point. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that's a reasonable
I
prospect?
swear I've heard that idea proposed by other people.
Oh yeah, it wasn't just him. Yeah, a few people have
just
said
the idea of bringing in not just the canal thing, but the idea of, hey, we've got all this unused, arguably uninhabitable land up north, but let's just import millions of Southeast Asians and have them live, farm, and die up there for us. I could see that possibility happening, but it would be sort of a weird situation because I can't imagine the attrition rates would be anything other than horrific, because those people are obviously adapted to the environment they live in, but sort of shifting them across. And let's be honest, they don't quite have the level of agency that the European man demonstrated in adapting to the harsh climate of Australia.
That's why
So
I point out, it may not be Indonesia, considering,
but the point I'm making is that, and the other thing is, do we even have any solid examples of Asians or Southeast Asians colonizing and sort of just adapting to harsher environments than what they're used to? Yes, there's obviously the massive Chinese incursion into Africa, but those are really just FIFO mining camps with extended stay facilities. They're not necessarily terraforming the topology of the place. Topographical evidence of terraforming. It's fair to say what I'm trying to get at here as a comparison is that you and I have been changed from our sort of stock European baseline as a consequence of growing up in the hellscape that is Australia, because these conditions are pretty brutal at the best of times. And I just wonder how well would the other races of man fare in, especially given that the Kimberley and the up north region, it's much hotter up there. There's a reason why we don't have huge population centers up there.
I heard Blair Cottrell actually floating the idea that maybe we actually evolved on Mars and not on Earth, considering when we venture outside, we have to put on so much PPE to protect ourselves from the elements.
True.
Yeah, man. You know what I did? Last time I went to the beach, I put sunscreen on, right? But I had just gotten a haircut, and when I do, I get it, like shaved, like number two. And I got sunburn on like the top of my scalp so bad that it actually burnt out a small patch of hair.
Oof.
And it's only now just started to grow back. Like I was terrified, like it was permanent, you know. Like,
I mean, shit,
uh,
I'd be very terrified as well.
yeah, I
Yeah,
noticed it
because
like the next day. I was like, holy fuck, I burnt out a patch of hair.
this is why I
And
don't get a number two. Minimum number four for me.
yeah, my hair grows too quickly, and the shorter I get it, um, the more time I have till I need a new one. So, but yeah, that was me being the pale Irishman that I am. I'm obviously not adapted to environments
Mm.
quite that harsh. Um,
Yeah, there's a bit more to, as in, there's a bit more credibility to that whole. Yeah, we are, born of. Yeah, we are still culturally European. It's only been 200 years, and that's certainly not enough time for any serious mutation adaptations to have taken place. And saying, oh yeah, we're going to move a third of Indonesia's population of jungle dwellers to the Kimberleys, where they're used to hot temperatures but not dry temperatures. Like that they would struggle adapting, and even with all the modern contrivances and stuff. Because I've been up north a handful of times under a variety of conditions. Most of them apparently not the worst, from what the regulars told me. And yeah, with the fact that when you step outside and you're immediately hit with this wave of heat, you sort of think, these are, did I how did I get here, and how do I go back to the cool place inside? Obviously it was for work purposes, but I can't imagine other races are able to fare any better under those conditions.
mm, yeah, and I always notice. I think actually you and me have had this conversation before. Like the older you get, the more you appreciate the cooler weather.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
it's definitely in my case. Like I used to love summer. I even like the scorching hot days. For whatever sick reason, I actually did like them. Now I absolutely hate them. And as soon as I start sweating, I feel uncomfortable. I'm like, oh man, I want to sit down by a cool breeze.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Anyway,
I've
guys,
never liked the summer, but let's move on.
yeah,
Any updates from the electioneering? Only thing I'm seeing
no,
on
I
the
just
ABC is ballot shortages, but
yeah, I just checked. I am looking at good old ABC. But look, no, nothing has been called yet. Not on the ABC anyway. Not a single seat. And I got to point this out to people, particularly if you are not from WA. Our last state election in 2021, of course, it was actually called by the ABC 45 minutes after booths closed because it was that much of an absolute blowout for the Libs and the Nats. And yeah, it was just such a crushing victory for Labor. Um, so there are 59 seats in our lower house. A whopping 53 of them went to Labor in that election. Uh, you had two of them go to the Liberal Party, and you had four of them go to the Nats, the Nationals. So it was this very unusual situation where I believe this was the first time in WA history that the Nationals were actually the opposition party. They were the official opposition. And they still are, by the way. Even though later on you did have one member of the Nationals defect to the Liberals, and then you had an even split. You had three members in each party. But still, because of the fact that the Nats initially won the majority, or out of those 6 seats that were left, they won the majority. They became the opposition. So you might be surprised to know that our official opposition leader in WA is actually Shane Love, and a lot of people are probably scratching their heads when I say that name. Uh, because yeah, he's very low profile. Probably the original leader was Mia Davies, so leader of the National Party and leader of the opposition. Uh, she resigned. I don't know if there was really that much point in her resigning, though. Um, and then, yeah, she handed it over to Shane Love. Um, because, look, even though Mia Davies was the official opposition leader, um, unofficially she wasn't, you know? Like, in this election, everyone has just been talking about Libby Mettam being the leader, even though she's technically not. But still, everyone knows that the Libs are the ones with a chance to win back a lot of seats and more than likely get more than the Nationals. And the reason is very simple. All of those inner city safe seats, such as Churchlands and South Perth, they're going to go back to the Libs. Um, so people have mainly been saying that, look, this is not going to be a replication of the utter wipeout that the Libs and the Nats experienced in 2021. However, it could still be um, a landslide for Labor. Why is that? Well, because they're going from only 6 seats. And as Anthony Green pointed out, uh, the coalition would actually need a swing of 23% in their favour to actually take office. So, pretty fair to say that they can't win this. Not that they say that, not that Libby Mettam actually goes out and admits that. They say that they're in it to win it. A lot of strategists just say, look, what the Liberal Party are really doing is focusing on winning the 2029 election. They're playing the long game. This is where they kind of start to reconsolidate lost ground. And then, after this election, who becomes the leader? Basil Zemplis. Mm-hmm. And then he becomes the hero that marches the Libs to an emphatic comeback in 2029. That seems to be the idea. Like, the people say, the strategy that the coalition are opting for. And yeah, I got to say, I agree. If you look at public polling, especially in terms of likability, Basil Zemplis is always up there. So for the non-Sandgropers, Basil Zemplis was a waffle player, WA FL. He never made it to the AFL. And then he just became like a TV and radio personality. Originally, like he just did sports, and then he branched out to do politics. And currently, he is the Lord Mayor of Perth. And he has very high approval ratings. Even though people don't care too much about, council elections, council politics, Basil nonetheless is actually quite popular. And this prompted the Liberal Party to do a bit of insider polling to see how things were going. And there was even basically a coup attempt to install Basil Zemplis as leader, even though he doesn't currently hold a seat in Parliament. Now, how would you actually do that? Well, some people get sick of me relaying this story, but back when you had Campbell Newman, the leader of the Liberal National Party in Queensland, he was the Lord Mayor of Brisbane. And this is back when Queensland had horrific floods. I know they kind of get floods and natural disasters each year, but like these ones in particular were really bad. And Campbell Newman ended up getting this high profile because he was just in the news every day, talking about evacuations and safety precautions and all that stuff. And then he basically ended up more popular than the current LNP leader. I can't remember who it is, by the way. Might have been Lawrence Springborg. I can't remember now. But anyway, they ran him outside of the Parliament. And they pre-select him for a seat, of course. And so what would happen is, in the event that the Liberals were to get a majority and win the election, he would just automatically be installed as premier as soon as he entered Parliament. So, no time on the backbench warming those seats and working your way up. You would just get instantly installed as premier. Well, that was the same idea that they were going to go for with Basil Zemplis. They were going to run him from the outside. He's running for the seat of Churchlands, by the way, which amazingly is actually held by Labor. And if anyone knows like Churchlands, that electorate, it's definitely one of our leafy collections of suburbs. Very rich area. So, yeah, that was the idea. Some people thought that they could do that. And you know what? I would say that if the Libs weren't in such a mess as they are at the moment, considering they only have 3 seats, that might have worked. But if you tried to do it and then you failed, well, that would just mean the failure of Basil Zemplis as a leader. And you sort of, you've blown your wad too early. You haven't played the long game. You tried to do something really, really quickly, and it just didn't work out. So that coup did not eventuate. Libby Medham, obviously, is still the leader of the Liberal Party, and she was taking them to the polls today. But yeah, we can be pretty much guaranteed that they're going to lose, and old Basil will come to the helm. And yeah, look, very, very rare for a party to win 4 terms in government. That would mean a 16-year reign. That's incredibly long. Although, there are figures like Joh Bjelke-Petersen. But still, they're pretty damn rare. So, yeah, my prediction also is, I don't know what people think of this, but yeah, I think Basil Zemplis is our future premier. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's a solid analysis that the Libs have realised they need to go to ground and just slow game it out for some considerable time. I have nothing further to add, really.
Okay. Well, guys, we have 1 seat called, and that is for the Nationals. Now, that would have to be one of the regional seats, of course, where their base is, of course. And also, I don't know if you noticed this, Kyber, like when you were out voting, or maybe just your everyday roaming through the suburbs. Did you notice there was a lot of campaign posters for the Nationals?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of posters for everyone, but just seeing the Nationals there was sort of a bit of a, okay, that's something you don't see every other election
No,
cycle. I vaguely
because
recall you saying they used to have, like the coalition had sort of a non-compete clause amongst themselves,
yeah,
but evidently that's broken down. And
that's right.
I do wonder if that's like a consequence of the Labour brand sort of being a bit tarnished, where maybe this is I'll just say the powers that be wanting to have a more rightward facing flank to catch up people who are interested in dissenting from the ranks of the Labour Party, but to act to have like the Nationals act as sort of like a roadblock to prevent people from going further to the right than what is considered politically acceptable, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, I still found it quite unusual though, because yeah, like you say, they're running all of these candidates in the suburbs, and yeah, for guys like you and me, that's very unusual to be seeing all of these Nationals ads everywhere. It's really just Labor, Liberal, Greens, and a few of the others. That's what we always see. So there's one example for you. And I think I was saying in the last Races War that there's been an unusual amount of vandalism, of graffiti. I've seen a few where people have just been drawing like dicks on the heads of the candidates and stuff. I honestly don't think it's politically motivated. I think these are just like, kids who want
hooligans.
to be. Yes, I mean, like this one here, where they're saying that like he's like a mouse who eats cheese. I doubt they actually had.
Sorry, I had to switch across to that.
I mean, I don't think there's a political message to that.
No, it's Big Dairy flexing on this Nationals person, clearly. That's the only
Yeah,
rational explanation.
yeah. But I gotta say, like, it's a waste of funds, though. I mean, the Nationals running all of these seats in the suburbs that only ever go to Labor or the Libs, and yeah, just like all around where I live, including like the inner city ones, they're running um, Nationals candidates, and it's just like, guys, none of them have any chance of winning. None of them. Like, why are you doing this? You're wasting time. You're wasting effort. You're wasting money. Um, yeah, it's quite extraordinary. Um, so I'd say, once they reconsolidate, assuming that they do, when we've got the results in, they need to have a much better um, agreement between them as a coalition, because they still are like, at least informally, a coalition. But they haven't been able to reach any agreement where they say, all right, these are your seats and these are ours, which is what they do at the federal level. They don't compete with each other in other electorates, which makes sense. I mean, that's what a coalition does. You're not supposed to like fight amongst yourselves. So, yeah, hopefully they do learn that lesson. Um, all right, so I thought maybe I'd just talk a bit about the leaders. Uh, I'll give you a little history on the Libs actually. So they've actually had 5 leaders since they were last in power. So let's see. So of course, Colin Barnett was the last Liberal premier. So when he was defeated, you had Mike Nahan. He was this American guy. A lot of people called him Ned Flanders because he had glasses and a mustache, and he actually sounded a bit like Ned Flanders as well. Needless to say, he was not very popular. He lasted 2 years. You then had Lisa Harvey, who was kind of popular at the beginning and then really ran out of steam quite quickly. She was in for just over a year. Then you had Zach Kirkup, and he ended up getting the moniker of Zach Cockup. That's actually what they were calling him on Sky News at the time, because he was the leader who led them in that disastrous 2021 result, where the Libs got 2 seats and the Nats got 4. Well, one thing I should say about that, like we've obviously mentioned several times about how bad that election was for them. I saw an interview with Colin Barnett on Sky News, and he said, look, the 2021 election was not really an election. It was a referendum on COVID. And, whatever you want to say about what Mark McGowan did in terms of, snap lockdowns and all that stuff, he was very popular. And the measures he was taking, even though there were some people who were very unhappy about them, overall, people from both sides of politics agreed that he did a good job. And I know you know this story, Kyber, but I remember you were probably there. We were at one of our favourite watering holes, and as I walked to the toilet, I overheard this table of hipsters talking about Mark McGowan, and they were referring to him as the God Emperor. And that really is the way people thought about him for a while. Did you see like
Seems
people
like
even getting Mark McGowan tattoos and stuff?
tattoos. Yeah. And several of those people have sort of done follow-ups to the media saying, yeah, they totally regret those by now. And it's just very funny that we had this fever dream moment at the state level where there were all these rabid shitlibs, sure if I should swear or not, but people of a left-wing persuasion absolutely fluffing the social ego of the state premier over his handling of the coronavirus kerfuffle.
Yeah. But I don't have fond memories of COVID.
Oh, God,
like the
no.
lockdown and everything.
God, of course not.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like going into it, like I was supportive of lockdowns and that kind of thing. And look, hate me for saying this. I still think things like the border closures and that, I think they were justified. And we were able to actually keep out immigration for a solid amount of time. And in the case of WA, we managed to keep out a shitload of methamphetamine as well. Thus showing that when the government wants to, they can take real action at the borders and stop undesirable people and undesirable products from entering. They absolutely have that power. But yeah, as it went on, like, do you remember he was doing those snap lockdowns where if there was just one reported case of
Yep.
COVID, boom,
That
it was
annoyed
like
me.
5-day lockdown straight off just for one case. And at the time, I was working like 2 casual jobs. And when that happened, that meant my work was gone. So, that was infuriating when that happened, like I'm getting told like I can't go and do my job and I can't earn money. Before that, I managed to get JobKeeper, which was good. I'm not complaining there, but like everything that came after that was just a massive inconvenience, and that
Yep.
was when I started to kind of change my mind as to the nature of these lockdowns, and just kind of thinking they've gone too far. Like I understand what they did initially, especially given that you have to err on the side of caution. We didn't quite know at the beginning just how deadly COVID was or could be. So you need to err on the side of caution. But as time went on and we realized it was like really on par with the flu, I just kind of thought, well, why the hell do we need like a 5-day lockdown over one single case? That just makes no sense to me. But nonetheless, whatever you want to say, that resulted in Labor winning 53 seats out of 59 in what Colin Barnett called the COVID referendum. So, it worked. I have to give him that.
Yep.
Okay, so after Zach Kirkup, you had a guy called David Honey. A lot of people have just forgotten about him. To be honest, my memory was only just slightly jogged reading about him today. He was there for 2 years, if that. And then you went to Libby Mettam, who actually only became the leader in January 2023. So, yeah, just 2 years. And she'll no doubt go to the well, she might stay on the front bench, actually. All depends on how many seats they win, of course. But definitely, she will not retain the leadership. Okay, so we now have one seat going to the Libs,
Yeah,
one to the
I'm
Nats.
looking at this right now, and I'm just not sure if I'm a dumbass or not. Oh, hang on, I found the other part of the website here, because I was just looking at like that first click through one, but the party totals actually shows what I was after here. So there's
I'll put up the graphic actually, just so people can see.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So there we go.
If
There's
you
the
hit
Libs
the show party totals, that's actually got a better rundown, because that's like just pages and pages of the swing. But if you do that one,
oh yeah, I wanted to read the swings. Yeah, no, the
we'll
swings
get
are very
to that.
interesting though. Yeah.
Oh, of course, because there's a lot more that are showing swings to the Liberal Party, but a 61 to 38% breakdown. Okay, so Labor, I'll be honest, that's actually more of a swing to the Lib stats than I was expecting. I thought it was going to be still a bigger blowout, or rather, it would be a stronger echo of the past. Unintentional pun there, but yeah, that's 10% swing. I mean, that's A lot higher than what I was expecting. Not that it
Yeah.
realistically matters from our perspective, but yeah, seeing the Nationals are 11.7%. I think that's just a prediction at this point in time because they haven't like counted enough. But that would be
Yeah.
fascinating if
Yeah. It's only 1.2% counted so far, actually. So definitely
way
early
too
days.
early. Well,
So,
that just means it's time for me to get a drink refill.
okay, get a refill and I'll
Follow it.
fill in
Yep.
while you're doing that. Okay, guys. So look, if you're listening to the audio, you don't have the video up on the screen. I'll just give you a quick little recap. We've got 1.2% of the vote counted. Booze closed just over an hour ago. Uh, Currently, on this is a two-party preferred basis. We've got Labor on 61.9% and the coalition on 38.1%. Now, overall, that is a 7.8% swing to the coalition. Now, you might recall me saying that Anthony Green said the Libs and the Nats would need a 23% swing towards them. So, yeah, 7.8% obviously is well below the mark there. Okay, so overall, well, look at that. Labor with a 27.3% swing against them. Libs with a 10% swing in their favour. Greens, oh no, 3.5% swing in their favour. Nationals, 11.2% swing in their favour. That's very impressive. Oh, look at that, it just updated. One Nation, 2.9% in their favour. And then others, which is basically just independents, 0.8%. Okay, now if we go back to the other page where we have the seats, these are just the various lower house electorates that we have in alphabetical order, of course. Some of these really stood out to me. So the seat of Armidale. Now, Armidale, our most dodgy suburb in the state, no doubt about that. Um, I've only in my life been in in my adult life been in two fights, and one of them was in well, actually no, it was in Seville Grove. God, don't ask me how I ended up down there, but some psycho guy tried to choke me for nothing. So it's really really dodgy. And if you know anyone who's worked there, they'll tell you, some pretty insane stories. An enormous problem with drugs and alcohol addiction, teenage pregnancy. All the hallmarks of a failed society, let's say. And unfortunately, it goes to the white people there as well. Are you back, Kuiper?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Hello.
So
Talking about being
I'm
choked out was the most I got out of that.
oh, okay. I was talking about Armidale.
Yep.
And I apologise if we have Armidale listeners. And look, I've met good people from Armidale, but
Some of these Armidale people, I'm sure they're very fine people.
yeah. But oh jeez. Let me use this. I was about to use the term white trash. Maybe I should just say lumpen prole instead.
Yeah,
Because I
that
agree.
works.
I don't like the term white trash, but yeah, there's a lot of lumpen prole in Armidale. But anyway, not to trash them any further, 15% swing to the Libs in Armidale. Wow. That is massive.
Don't you know, bro? That's the base right-wing party that's going to end woke.
Right. Do they even think about things like that in Armidale?
Some of them do. Some of them do. I've met these people, and they are, for lack of a more articulate term, they're very much rightoids.
Oh, really? From Armidale?
Yeah. I've met working class guys from Armidale and some of the neighbouring suburbs in and around that vicinity, and they are extremely energized by the anti-woke messaging that the J right. Can I get away with saying J right? Is that coded enough that it's not going to trip the?
No, that's fine.
Cool.
Yeah,
But yeah,
well, I
the
should
gay right
say
is
we're
absolutely
on YouTube.
leaning in. Yeah. So obviously, I have to pick my words with a certain delicacy, but it's undeniable at this point that Con Inc., Conservatism Incorporated, that is making hay out of the anti-woke attitude that a lot of people have expressed, and stealing a point that I've heard from other quadrants in the whatever the heck we are sphere these days. The left have got no one to blame but themselves for the absolute backlash and pounding they're taking on the cultural front, where people are just openly willing to engage in, I wouldn't say anti-woke behavior, but to simply reject the messaging of the left. And while I personally haven't seen it myself, I'd absolutely love to. But seeing leftoids cry over the fact that the rightoids are just encouraging, the unaffiliated mass centrist, not centrist, but just the the middle strata of society to just openly reject feminism, certain amounts of homosexuality, just to sort of, I don't want to say push back, because obviously you're saying, oh yeah, pushing back against homosexuality is just like, what? But the metaphor aside, I've heard reports that the left are crying about how all of their social progress is being vaporized in front of them, and their inability to sort of contain their radicals, as I've heard other people put it, is the large reason why they'll be on the downward spiral for a long time to come. Like, we're talking another 10 years of this stuff where leftism has been proven to be too destabilizing to the global J empire. And now there's sort of a decompression period where people are allowed to sort of go, yeah, you know what? I really hate all this diversity, equity, inclusion stuff. And there's enough people doing that. A lot of people, or rather, there's this sense that they now have the average person has the permission slip to engage in such public displays of questioning and sort of critiquing these things, and it's catching a lot of leftoids off guard where they thought their power and status was eternal. And I just wondered how that will emerge in Australia. But what I can say that I've seen so far is that there's a lot of people who were politically ambivalent 10 years ago who are now actively cheering on the Trump. I wouldn't say sort of Trump phenomenon of, oh yeah, we're doing anti-woke stuff to own the left. These were people who 10 years ago would turn their noses up and say, I don't want to talk about politics, I want to talk about sports. Whereas there's a lot of them out there, again, working class people, your average tradies, they love this stuff. I was in the polling line. This is definitely not a Rod Dreher style story. But when I was in the polling lines earlier today, I didn't bother to engage in any conversation with the broad masses, because why bother? But the people both in front of me and behind me, I swear on my honor, I heard them bring up stuff that Trump was doing. I'm like, how is that in any way, shape, or form relevant to a state election? But it just goes to show that this was the day of politics for a lot of, the lumpen proles out there, or the broad masses, I should say, and they're more politically engaged, or at least they're paying attention to these things in ways that simply were not the case 10 years ago. And again, these are not college educated people, at least they don't give off any of the vibes. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see that certain working class suburbs are now doing the same thing that happened in America, where you have the extremely wealthy and the extremely poor both voting for the same party, because we're here to own the left, to own the shit libs.
Yeah, and I mean, Australia is always just, a few years behind what is going on in America. It just takes us a little while to catch up. And I mean, that's certainly not uncommon commentary to be saying that, in a way, you can almost say that, like, Labor and the Libs are switching sides, in that, the Liberals are putting themselves out as, say, like the party for tradies. So they're becoming a more working class party, whereas the ALP are more interested in inner city hipsters and their support for green energy, you know. And certainly to an extent, the modern left, or the modern Western left, is elitist. They look down
Mm.
on the working class.
that
You know,
alienation of the working class is going to bite the left in the backside, and
it
arguably
already
that's happening. Yeah, sorry, it already has, but it will continue to amplify for a lot longer than they might realize. Like the left have screwed themselves over for a long time to come.
yeah, and they don't seem to realize that, you know, um, because you can definitely argue that like the working class uh, usually, you know, you could say holds more socially conservative views.
Hmm.
Now, I know that seems sort of
Sodomy is a rich
paradoxical.
people pastime or rich people
Yeah.
hobby.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, they tend to be more supportive of things like gay marriage, and then, you know, economic policies in, you know, the green energy sphere. You know, the average working class person will say, well, what's wrong with nuclear power? And and you know what? They will be able to tell you what's wrong with green energy. Even working class people know this. It makes their power bills go up. You know, everyone at least has enough grey matter to figure out that part. Like, hey, my power bills go up month after
Go.
month after month, and I don't think it's any coincidence that, you know, shutting down all these coal mines and coal fire stations. I don't think it's any coincidence that, you know, my prices are going up. Um, so yeah, but look, I am curious though. You actually think that like issues like DEI, you think that's actually relevant in a WA election? Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I zoned out for a second there. Sorry, was there a
Oh,
question
sorry.
there?
No,
Or are you just
no, I just,
pontificating?
oh no, I just asked. Like, I know you're talking about just sort of broader political trends, but I mean, do you think that, you know, wokeness or DEI is actually like in any way a central issue in this particular election?
Hmm. I need to think about that. I'd actually say no. I don't believe it's going to be. To some extent, there'll be like you can't treat the whole of the people who actually went out and voted seriously today. You could carve them up into about three groups approximately. You know, people that are the first two you can guess. People that think like, oh, yeah, vote blue no matter, vote left no matter who. You would have a constituency of people who are voting for what they think is the anti-DEI stuff, and both of those would be, yeah, less than a quarter or thereabouts. I mean, I don't want to do the math in my head in for this because I'm just making stuff up on the top of my head, but I would say the broad number of people that are voting today are just going, who's going to give me better economic and social conditions? They're not necessarily going to factor that in because I don't believe that, from what I've seen, DEI is quite at the toxic overbearing level the way it is. I mean, it is overbearing to see the deaf sign language stuff, the constant welcome to country, but it's not like we're at a
Yeah.
breaking point over only that. There are other considerations I would expect people would have in mind where it's not a central issue. It would be for some, but those are the politically hyperactive types. But for again, the common broad masses out there are probably just going, hey, stuff costs a bit too much. This guy, Roger Cook, he's been the bloke in charge since God Emperor McGowan kept us safe from the coof. There would be some people who would sort of think, oh, maybe we need to give the existing guys another term, or some people thinking, nah, mate, I just voted for the other bloke. So I don't think DEI is like a polarizing issue the way it was for the Americans with their national election back in November. And as I said, this is a state election, so I don't think those big social issues are going to be here because they would be drowned out by cost of living pressures, which isn't necessarily a DEI uh, issue, as much as you, me, and our audience might be able to point to immigration as having caused many of those issues. In the mind of the average voter, they're not going to see it like that.
Right. Um, I got like we got door knocked a few times. I think because we live in
How
like in a very
unfortunate.
Well, how unfortunate for them when I answer the door.
Yeah, touche.
Because we got a guy who came over. Now, a friendly guy. He was from the Labor Party though, and he wanted to know, like, all my issues. And all my issues basically were kind of federal though. So we go through the list, and he was like, "Well, what about cost of living?" And I said, "Well, that again, I think is primarily driven by immigration, and there's nothing you guys can do about that." And he basically admitted I was right when I said that. But then when it came to, what is it actually that the state government can do? I said, well, what about not giving into green groups and freeing up more land for development? Because there's a hell of a lot of patches of land, even in the Perth metropolitan area, they're just empty. They're not doing anything with them whatsoever. And very often we leave them because there's like some endangered lesbian insect there or something, that the Greens insist we must protect. And again, and he's just like, oh, yeah, we're not really planning to do anything like that. I'm like, okay, look, I wasn't going to vote for you anyway, but, you certainly didn't sell me on anything. But yeah, look, maybe we'll dive into some of the issues. Well, actually, no. Just considering I've got this story up on the screen, just when you started talking about DEI and LGBT stuff, you just reminded me of this bloke. So, if you are watching the video, you'll see that this is the candidate for Albany regional seat. And the candidate is Thomas Bruff, who is, I believe he's a GP. Yeah. And he created an absolute shitstorm, I think about a year and a bit ago. He's a councillor in Albany, and he made comments saying that pedophiles were part of the LGBT movement. Where's the lie there? Let me just see if the ABC included this word. Yes, they did. See the sentence here. Dr. Bruff has been referred to the State Administrative Tribunal for alleged professional misconduct after falsely linking the LGBTIQ, Jesus Christ, plus community with pedophiles. No, there's nothing false about that. As I said, just look at NAMBLA, North American Man Boy Love Association. Sometimes the other queers will sort of push them to the sidelines because it's bad optics. But very often they march with them, and they consider themselves part of that movement. Or I guess a more sort of unofficial term would be a MAP nowadays, minor attracted person. I remember there was basically like a group of them on Twitter operating at one stage, which was just crazy. But yeah, this guy, well, actually, there was one other candidate who was controversial. But this guy, I think, so far has been the most controversial. But the other guy, I'll just bring him up. He was the guy who said that getting your car broken into was a welcome to country. Do you remember that guy?
Yep, I remember that. That was terrific.
Let me just bring him up. Darren Spackman. So this bloke, again, running for the Libs, running in Kimberley, which of course is in the northwest. Yeah, he said break-ins should be called welcome to country. And he made some other comments saying like, I'll see if I can find it.
That's really good. I mean, that's...
You said something else like, you said something like hang the cunts when he was referring to criminals up there. He was like, what do we do with them? Just fucking hang them. And, he was obviously talking about Aborigines when he said that. But this guy was disendorsed. So for doing a racism, he was disendorsed from the Libs. I'm not sure if they had time to replace him because this happened uh, only a few weeks ago, before the election. So they might have just had to um, pack it in for that. But uh, Thomas Brough, amazingly, was not disendorsed from the Liberal Party. Now, this is despite the fact that it's not written in this article, but he did give like a qualified apology. He didn't quite retract what he said. This absolutely infuriated the gay lobby, and I believe there's even an online petition for him, like not only to lose his endorsements, but to lose his job um, as a GP. But when me and Nolsey covered this at the time, I just said, okay, that's it. He's gone. That's it. Like
Mhm.
tomorrow, Libby Metham's going to announce that, he's resigned or they're forcing him out of the party. But amazingly, he actually stuck around. So that means that, like, the Liberal Party will not tolerate a racism. However, they will tolerate a homophobia, which is interesting, I think. So it still shows that, I don't know, there's still sort of an attitude out there among some people that even though, they might be broadly accepting of, you know, gays, they still think there's something wrong with it in a way. Like they feel it. And, a, a, a good example of, people who feel that way, I think, would be like kind of shit lib parents who are told that their kid is going to attend a drag queen story hour. And these are people who may have voted yes in the gay marriage plebiscite, but they still instinctually feel that there is something wrong with exposing their children to the homosexual
I
world.
think we're going to see a lot more of that. Another bit of commentary that again sort of goes beyond just the topic at hand of the election, because of the sort of vibe shift, for lack of a better term, but it's more like a controlled demolition of the radical DEI left. You're going to see a lot of liberals who, as you just were pointing out, would go along with these things, but deep down knew there was something wrong. You're going to see a lot of overt support for LGBT stuff, the usury, sodomy, and abortion, more so the latter two than anything. Yeah, a lot of those people who you were right in saying, deep down they know there's something wrong with this, and that's worthy of examination, because the extent to which the majority of the left believed these things, they believed them as, again, I keep using the expression luxury beliefs, but it was more than that. It's like you had to openly profess support for the rainbow flag and all that it stood for in order to socially advance. But now that that has fallen out of elite favor, you're going to, the prediction that others have made that I'm inclined to share is that you're going to see an awful lot of leftists suddenly abandon those talking, not so much talking points, but abandon those belief points in order to maintain what they think is their good social standing amongst their superiors. And that's going to cause a lot of friction and consternation amongst the left, where you'll have all of these true believers of sodomy wailing and screaming, but ineffectually, about how the rank and file left has just gone, no, we're not down with the trans stuff anymore. And a lot of these people will walk it back. So in that context, uh, the cowards in the Liberal Party think they can now sort of tolerate a little bit more homophobia than what they could have gotten away with, say, 3 or 4 years ago.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so. And I think with the transgender movement, I remember when that first sort of became, a big front and center issue was back when bloody Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn
Yep.
Jenner, which was
2015 was when they really went mainstream with this stuff.
yes, yeah, so 10 years ago. And prior to that, of course, we had you know, like what was it? Around the world, people were legalizing gay marriage, or they were legalizing civil unions. Financial arrangements that were usually reserved for married couples were made available for gay couples, that kind of thing. And there really wasn't any pushback of it at all. Like it was just, progressing, as we like to say in politics. It was just a continuing progressive, like uh, linear run. But then 2015 came, and the tranny thing, the T in the LGBT, that was what really, when some people just said, no, wait, I don't like this. This is going too far. Um, and that was when, Drag Queen Story Hour started to make its appearance. You started getting like other celebrities going trans, like that band Axis of Awesome.
Nope,
That
never heard of them. Can't be
they're
that
a
awesome if
comedy.
I've never heard of them.
They're a comedy trio. You might have seen that probably the biggest thing they ever did was called the Four Chord Song, where they just like combined all of these number one hits into one song that all use the same chord progression. It's like multi-millions of views on YouTube. But anyway, their like lead guy, Jordan Raskopoulos, I think his name is, he became a woman, and he kept his name the same because Jordan is, like a unisex name. But I just noticed a lot of people, including lefties, like there was a mate of mine. He was like an absolute dead set Labor supporter, supported gay marriage and all of that. But even he said to me, like, no, I don't think that trans women are real women. You know, he still said things like, look, if they want to do the surgery and whatever, they can do it. But
I
like,
hate
I
that
still,
cop out excuse of,
yeah,
oh, if it
he
makes
still
them
had,
feel
yeah,
better. It's like, no, but it doesn't. And I
yeah,
have recently seen the skim readable synopsis of some research paper that was conducted. Sorry, a research paper that was about a review of longitudinal outcomes for trans people that went through with the study, and in their estimate, the post-op trannies had an increase of up to 40% of suicidal ideation.
yeah, yeah.
So obviously, none of us are at all surprised, but it's nice to have that now entering the somewhat mainstream discourse where we're able to reject these things with a lot more certainty that we're not just going to be shut down for hate speech and shit of that sort to say, no, there's no health benefit to indulging in people's delusional autogynophilic fantasies and the like, because they
Yeah.
sure as hell don't benefit from it.
Yeah, yeah. So like a few years ago, Soap Merchant and I did this stuff on the whole transgender movement. Did a Cultured Bogans episode on it, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we went through some of that research that you're talking about, where suicidality increased in post-op transgender people. And if you want to read more on that stuff, there's a website called sexchangeregret.com. And as the name suggests, it's actually run by a guy who did have a sex change operation and then transitioned back. Um, and he even he was brutally honest. He admitted, he's like, "Hey, I'm a wacko. Like I'm off my head." He said that. And he had an awful upbringing, like he was sexually abused as a child and fell into drugs and alcohol and all the rest. And he admitted, he was like, yeah, look, I thought I was a woman because I was crazy, basically. Um, and it's really sad to see that. Like if we want another stat on transgender people, I think it's something like 47% of them attempt suicide as well. And, you can't tell me that that is just because of like societal um, unacceptance or something. Like when almost half of them are trying to kill themselves. You're going to have to do better than saying it's society demonizing them or whatever. Because I mean, can you think of a group that is more demonized than white nationalists? I can't.
No, there certainly seem to be the bottom of the kicking, or rather the top of
Yeah,
the kicking pile, I
we.
guess.
I mean, if it wasn't the case, Kyber and I would be using our real names right now.
Yeah, I
But do
mean,
we attempt suicide at 47%? At a rate of 47%? You know, I mean, honestly,
uh,
think about that. So there is something wrong with it. It's a genuine mental illness, and even people like traditional Labor voters and that will tell you that. Even bloody Germaine Greer, the feminist, she wrote The Female Eunuch. Even she was like branded as like some kind of bigoted Nazi. She is a Marxist. She's even said herself that like she identifies as a Marxist.
yeah,
And
that's definitely the best one. Is that when the whole TERF, TIFF, trans
that
inclusionary
term,
feminist for
yes,
the
the term.
yeah, TERF and TIFF, two sides of that, where you have the trannies calling feminists, "Oh, you're a right wing fascist because you don't support trans rights." It's just like, but the TERFs are openly communist, Marxist, all of that usual
Yeah,
smorgasbord. Not that us on the right can really complain about that, but it's like it is hilarious to watch them just sling around the term fascist, neo-Nazi, this, that, and the other. The moment there's a small amount of disagreement where the petty border maintenance they engage in is hilarious to watch from afar. Is the short answer, short response.
yeah, and I mean that's a civil war that is still going on to this day. Like 10 years later, 10 years after the whole tranny thing, uh, you know, started to become big. Um, and I mean, what's also funny about it is that um, I mean, this has happened in the UK for a while. Is that you're getting pockets of Muslims like that. The population is so big now that they're just pushing back on all of that stuff. Like even in Australia, you had like a council in the western suburbs of Sydney where they removed a book that had like same-sex parents depicted on it. Um, and something like that, would be unheard of in a lily white electorate. It just wouldn't happen. So that's another example of that sort of cannibalism within the left, and it is entertaining to watch, no doubt about it. Um, but yeah, this guy, uh, Thomas Bruff, you can see here in this story that he was making comments about abortion. So he was asked if WA's abortion laws should be reviewed, and he replied by saying, yes, babies born alive should not be left to die. Now, I can't remember exactly what it is now, but I believe it's something like the fetus at up to 5 months can be terminated. And, referring to that as um, a live baby is accurate. I mean, remember at this stage, it's not like you're just scrambling a small cluster of cells. This is a developed body with a brain, with a beating heart. That's what we're talking about. And uh, it's actually kind of disturbing when you look at, just how late we leave it. Like in just about every jurisdiction in Australia now, I think, you can terminate it at a ridiculously late stage. So, um,
Abortion has
as
become
the
a competitive sport in the minds of too many women.
well, do they still have that bloody website, Shout Your Abortion? Do you remember that?
Uh no, I might have purged that from my mind, but tragically that kind of
Oh,
rings a bit of a bell.
so
It
sorry,
doesn't
I brought it
surprise
back.
me that there's something out there where it's like women saying abortion is the most powerful thing they're able to do. It's sort of like, why do I have to put up with women and their so-called rights because they don't do the right thing with their rights?
Yeah. Um. So yeah, the ABC. I guess this was perhaps another attempt at getting this guy disendorsed. As you can see, this was actually only reported on the 1st of March, so a week ago. Um, And I'll be looking. You know what? Let me just check right now.
Yeah, I was just
How
about to say, if
is
we flick back
how is
to
Albany
that,
going? 11.4% swing to the Libs in Albany, with 7.6% of the vote counted. But of course, too early to call, just like most of the seats so
yeah,
far.
there's a couple that have been called, but just looking at the big graph at the top there,
Oh,
um,
jeez.
Labor Party are down 3 seats from what I'm seeing on that other page. Liberal Party's won a single seat, and the Nationals have won 2. So I suppose
Okay. Looking on this one, the ALP
view
is on
party
23.
totals.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
this
yeah,
says ALP on 23, Liberals on 2, Nationals on 4, and other
so,
on none.
yeah. So I was reading the changed numbers on that other page, the view all party totals one.
Oh,
That's what
this
I
one.
was
Okay.
going off. Yeah,
Yep.
I think
Okay.
that's going to be the we. I think it's a fair bet to say the Labor Party will retain power. The real interesting part is who are going to be the runners up, and um, what position of the fourth party. Because like I'm looking at the. Actually, no, I take that back. It's pretty much a given that it's going to be the big four. And One
Yeah.
Nation's still at what, 3.2%? Because for a while there, the Australian Christians were, I mean, again, it's way too early. We're still at what, like 8.7% counted. So,
Hmm.
but no, just seeing, I think the only interesting result out of tonight, as you've alluded to, will be how much do the Nationals carve away from the Liberals. But more than that, it's sort of a foregone conclusion by now because what was it, first to 30? And the Labor Party are already saying, well, they're predicted to win at least 24 seats by about now. So,
Yeah. And I don't think I need to point out to anyone that this so far is obviously a landslide. And maybe, I mean, if it continues in this direction, you could argue it's another blowout. Um, so wow, okay, not looking too good for the coalition here.
nope.
Um, but yeah, the thing is though, like these issues, like LGBT stuff and abortion and whatever, they are sort of like generally accepted as static. Like we're not changing them, like, or if anything, we're just going to make them more progressive. You can terminate an abortion at a later stage. Um, and the liberals always concede that ground. You know, when Libby Metten was asked about these comments from Thomas Bruff, she said the Liberal Party treats abortion like all matters of life and death as a conscience vote. I supported the recent reforms to WA's abortion laws in Parliament. So these social issues, argue abortion is a bit more than a social issue, but anyway, the Liberals might like kind of tepidly oppose them at the time. In this case, they didn't oppose them at all. But then, once the left get their way and they get their new law passed, the Liberals just put up their hands and they say, oh, okay, well, don't worry about it anymore. I mean, do you ever hear about like the federal libs talking about abortion or about gay marriage or anything like that? About like, turning back the clock or say voluntary assisted dying, anything like that? No. Once these issues are won and move in that progressive direction, they stay there. And the Libs and the Nats just don't want to ever do anything about them, which is
Yep.
disappointing. So, we just keep fighting about the economy and everything. Not that that's not important, but
What else are we going to fight about?
yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Klan here in WA. I'll show you this bloke. This is Nick Goran, and he is considered to be a Liberal Party factional warlord, as they like to say. So he's in the South Metropolitan region, and this is in the upper house. So, he's not one of the three libs in the lower house. He's got more of a secure position up there. And as you can see here in his Wikipedia profile, it says that he is a conservative Christian. He is pro-life and opposes same-sex marriage, euthanasia, and even surrogacy. That's a novel one. So this guy has been considered to be part of a factional power broker group along with Peter Collier. So Peter Collier, again, same kind of thing. He's very much like a right-wing Christian type. Now, these guys wield a lot of power when it comes to party votes and uh, the leaders that the membership support, things like that. And they are not fans of Libby Metum at all. In fact, there was a WhatsApp group conversation that was leaked where they were trashing the hell out of Libby Metum and talking about how they wanted someone else as leader. Uh, as a result of that, Libby Metum actually asked both these men, Nick Garan and Peter Collier, to apologize. Nick Garan refused, and so he stayed on the backbench, which I believe made him the only um, Liberal member of Parliament not in the cabinet, right? Because remember, like basically every member they had elected to Parliament were members of the cabinet because there was just so little of them. So they all needed like a front bench portfolio allocated to them. On the other hand, Peter Collier did apologise, so you could say he cucked in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So um, that I think, in fact, I think some people have suggested this. That is perhaps why this guy, Thomas Brough, has been able to stick around because obviously the kind of things that Thomas Brough is saying very much line up with Nick Garan and Peter Collier's worldview as well. And they kind of want to run as many of these types of candidates as they possibly can. So this will be another interesting thing to keep an eye on after this election, is to see, particularly within the Liberal Party, how many from that Christian right or conservative right would have won as compared to the moderates. And, will that have an impact on what will probably be the leadership of Basil Zemplis after the election? Could we in any way actually see the Liberal Party finally, say, pushing back on some of the progressive social agenda? It's possible. Might happen. I hope it happens, but
Sure would be nice if it did happen.
yeah.
Where are we at? 10.8% counted. Seems to be trending in that general direction. So
the ALP on 26, 3 each for the Libs and the Nats, and that means the ALP only has to win another 4 seats to be guaranteed majority. So
yeah, they could be calling it an early night tonight. I suppose the only funny thing that I'm seeing at the moment, depending on how this pans out, but it would be moderately interesting if the Australian Christians topped One Nation, because if you go to the all party totals one, the other tab, then do show all parties button in the top left. I'm just looking at the numbers for One Nation and Australian Christians there.
Yeah, not yet. So One Nation are coming in 5th behind the Nationals, got an independent, and then the Australian Christians. Yeah, they were on the ballot that I had. They were probably on yours as well. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, look, in the lower house anyway, I don't think. I think that'll probably just be the Labor Party, Libs, and Nats. I don't even think the Greens maybe will win anything here. Even though, well, you can see there the Greens have a 6% swing towards them. That's interesting. Whether that's enough to get a lower house seat, though, I'd say probably not.
But yeah, you are
Oh,
right. It's still
mate. All right. So yeah, guys, this might not turn out to be a marathon uh,
no. We'll probably
coverage.
be buggering off a bit because I don't see any particular need to sort of keep going for however long it takes them to count this, but
Yeah.
it's more or less a foregone conclusion. I mean,
Well, we'll
well,
see. I can't. Huh?
I was just gonna duck off for a bit and get another refill. I'm burning my way through my
Yeah, sure.
Scotch collection at the moment.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so I'll fill in while Kyber's off doing the refill. Geez, he drinks at a fast rate, doesn't he? Um, so, yeah, I mean, look, tonight it looks like, well, if we're going by what is on the screen right now, yeah, look, this isn't just a landslide for Labor. This is a blowout. In fact, if we go by the amount of seats that the Libs and the Nats currently have, this is actually identical to the current makeup of the lower house. So, unless they're able to actually add a couple of seats here um, before the end of the night, they're in serious trouble. And if this is another blowout, I mean, they're really going to have to. Oh, look at that 30. Well, there we go. It's called. Okay. All right. So at the time where we have this called for the ALP, they're on 30 seats, Libs on 3, Nationals on 3, and other on 1. Oh, okay, well, look at that. I was wrong. So it looks like we've got an independent or maybe someone from one of the minor parties who's grabbed that one. We'll work on that soon. But there we go. Hopefully, Kyber can stick around for the speeches. Usually, what we do like to do here on the Racer is play the speeches live as they come through. I would traditionally get my soundboard out and play a lot of offensive drops while the speeches were going on. This is on YouTube, and thanks to those joining us on YouTube. But guys, just don't get us banned there, please. I want to keep the comments open, the chat open, all of that. So just appreciate it if you don't do anything on there to get us banned. But yeah, I don't think I'll be using the soundboard for the speeches because we're on YouTube, but also because, well, we've got new laws to worry about. We've got basically hate speech laws are part of our criminal code, at least at the federal level. They are anyway. And yeah, we actually risk criminal prosecution for saying naughty things these days.
Naughty things on the internet is what makes the ruling class incredibly nervous.
Definitely. Okay, so how about now? I forgot to talk about Roger Cook. So look, if you're not familiar with Roger Cook, the current premier, he's only been around for 2 years after the rock star Mark McGowan resigned, 2 years into his second term. He was deputy leader beforehand. I believe actually he's also the member for the seat of Kwinana, which obviously is a safe Labor seat. He became the deputy leader 10 days after he was elected to the party. So that was under Eric Ripper. We remember that guy when he was opposition leader. Then to Mark McGowan, but he kept the deputy leadership. And Roger Cook really actually got a higher profile during COVID because he was the health minister. And, one of the things that actually surprised me when Roger Cook became premier, became premier, was that he was often seen as like the one who pushed the COVID restrictions too far because he was the health minister. Now, even though the snap lockdowns, they were captain's calls. That was Mark McGowan just kind of acting almost unilaterally. But interestingly,
he had to step down as health minister, and Amber-Jade Sanderson took over. So isn't that interesting that, like, during COVID, and during a time where our premier is said to have become a rock star and just have, be the country's most popular premier as he was, at the same time, his health minister had to resign. Or, okay, maybe I'm a bit harsh when I say resign, but there was a cabinet reshuffle that took him away from that senior ministry of health. And he was put into tourism, state development, jobs and trade, commerce and science. So he was given like a bunch of minor portfolios. So he was demoted, effectively. It's a very interesting thing. So that's why I thought that when Mark McGowan resigned, I thought, oh, okay, they're going to go with Amber-Jade Sanderson. I also thought that just because, well, she's a woman, and wouldn't it be great for the Labor Party to go on about having a woman, even though they did have a premier before, Carmen Lawrence, a short-lived female premier for Labor. But in the end, no, Roger Cook came out on top. He prevailed over Amber-Jade Sanderson, and he had to actually go against his own union, United Voice. They're also they were known as the Hospitality and Miscellaneous Workers Union, I think. Often they would just refer to them as the MISOs. And amazingly, even though they backed Amber-Jade Sanderson, he still managed to come out on top. He was able to take on the factional heavies and become premier. So he's still not very high profile, though. There's still people you meet in Perth who haven't heard of Roger Cook. They don't know the name of their own premier, and that's
many such cases.
Yeah, he's in Mark McGowan's shadow. Now, I mean, that still translates electorally for him as a good thing, of course. I mean, just look at these results. Labor's now up to 32 seats. However, he's not personally popular. It's just that the Labor brand is so popular here in WA that thanks to Mark McGowan that, just by default, he gets the votes. That's all. So I was just saying, Kyber, I don't know if you heard me, but usually I like to wrap up these shows once the speeches have been done.
How long are we going to be waiting for that?
Well, we'll see. Obviously, I don't have a gun to your head. You can leave whenever you like. we can maybe have an early one. But look, considering the fact, I was just saying there that, if these numbers hold out, this isn't just another landslide victory. This is another blowout for Labor. So I would imagine that the speeches for both victory and concession would be, pretty soon because...
Cool. Well, I'll hang around for... when one side concedes, that's pretty much, you don't need to hang around for the final tally.
Yeah, that's right.
And 32 seats for Labor. It's, it's sort of like... I mean, maybe I'm professing profound ignorance at this point, but at least on the webpage there where it says 32 seats, but we've only got 12% of the vote. So why are they saying they have 32 seats, or is that just from the projections of what they're getting at this point?
I assume that's projections, yeah, but they're called. So
I'm just wondering, where on this damn website do we get here's what's actually been called for Party A, Party B, Party C, and so forth? I mean, is that available here? Am I asking too much? I know on the main live results one, that's only saying 23% of the vote counted for Armidale, ALP retain, Bassendean, Bateman. Karen was a Lib gain, which is, I suppose, mildly titillating. Jandicott's been called for the ALP. Maylands, the Midwest is Nats retain, Mount Lawley, ALP, Perth.
Hold on, can I just stop you there? Something just caught
my
eye. look at Churchlands. That's only a 2.2% swing to the Libs, and
What
it
were
says
they
that it's
for?
too early to call. Do we remember who's running for the seat of Churchlands?
Oh, yes.
That's Basil.
Fascinating. Click on the little
So,
down arrow for the benefit of
yeah.
the thingos
Now,
there.
still, a 2.2% swing may be enough because I remember that Labor just won
But
Churchlands. It
if
was
you
a
click on the
tiny
down
2.
arrow, as I politely asked for the benefit of the video viewers, you can actually see the factoid has there previously held by ALP with a margin of
Oh,
1.6.
there you go. Yeah,
Well
tiny.
spotted. I don't follow this stuff half as much as I guess I ought to, but okay, no, that's moderately interesting. So I think that speaks to your overall theory that Basil, um, a quote from Faulty Towers, is being
Yeah.
groomsed for party leadership in the near future, but sorry, in the long future, I should say. But no, well spotted.
Yeah. Oh no!
Well,
Look,
so
if he wins, they'll make him the leader. I don't have any doubt about that. But the thing is, though, if these numbers carry through, that is, if the Libs and the Nats don't win any more seats, they're left with the exact same number of seats in the lower house than they were in 2021. So that would be yet another blowout. And when you have another blowout, that means that you're basically guaranteed to lose the election after that. You know what I mean? So
really got
in the case that Basil becomes leader, he might have a whole 2 terms to go through before he would actually make it. So, that's a long slog, 8 years.
Yeah. How old's he going to be by then? Because what is he by about now? 50?
Yeah, something like that.
He can't be a spring chicken. Not that I'm too far off. One being 1 foot in the grave.
How old is he? Yeah, he's 53. And he's got an enormous Roman nose.
Using the nifty filters at the top of the page there, it says Karen. So if you scroll right to the very top.
I think it's Kareen, isn't it? No.
Kareen, yes. Kareen and Churchlands. Oh, Churchlands is actually now being saying Lib Gay. So if you scroll to the very top of the screen.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah, see it. Yeah.
Scroll.
Okay. So, yeah.
Scroll
I'll wait. They've upgraded it to 3.6% swing.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, sure. That's enough then to get him in. All right. There we go. Basil's in and more than likely the next leader.
I'm in. Well, how does the I can't do the voice correctly, but I think it's like something from one of the Metal Gear Solid games. Anyway, although having said that, it looks like on my end they've downgraded to Lib likely, but using the filters at the top of the page there, it's got like changing seats.
Geez, it changes real quickly, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm having trouble keeping up with these. It's like
15.4% counted for the audio listeners. 18 seats in doubt, but otherwise it's yeah.
So I mean, we are still seeing fair amount of swings going to the Libs. So Darling Range 5.9.
So I suppose the question, the intelligent question for people who follow this more than I do would be to ask: did the Libs and the Nats have any benchmark of a performance of how much of a swing? Because obviously they knew they would not be able to take power back. Not in their wildest dreams would that have been something they dare talk about publicly. Privately, sure, that's a different matter entirely. But how much of a swing for the Libs to consider this to be part of a successful, slow claw back to power? Because the other page says 9.1% swing to the coalition. What was their metric for success, I wonder?
Well, Anthony Green said that they would have needed a 23% swing to actually win. But, well, look, just
I'm saying
that.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
I was
Well,
just going
look,
to say, like, they must have known that the 23% swing was out of the question and they're setting up a long run. If they're
yes.
doing an incremental victory where they still lose, but they go, well, we've clawed back, we're at the halfway mark of 23%. Like, have they made any comments to like that? Or, what would they consider to be, oh, we lost, but we made enough ground for the next electoral cycle for us to build upon that in
Well,
the future?
okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. No, in that case, I don't know if it's then about how much of a swing they get. It would be about how many seats they win. And what I find very interesting, like especially just looking at this cluster that I've got on the screen right
Yep.
now, let's look at like Girraween, 12.3% swing to the Libs, Hillary's 8%, Jandakot 11.5%, Joondalup 18.8%, Kalamunda 14.9%. They are massive, massive swings. Some of
So they're
them
just
more than
burrowing under the
halfway.
surface on
However,
everything then.
yes, but however, how many of those seats have the Libs won? None.
None.
None whatsoever.
But that's what I'm saying.
So
It's like they would be building for the next election in 3 years' time.
yeah,
So that
yeah, but
my question is,
what I'm saying
how much
is
ground game are they will? How much ground game do they need to accomplish to that for this cycle to be considered successful for the next cycle? Yeah, you're right. It's probably going to be a blowout in terms of pure seats. But from what you're showing on the screen there, and I was noticing that too, that the Libs are winning. So the ALP is winning each seat by less of a margin, so it's not a blowout overall where next time around they only have to try a little bit harder to actually regain a majority in the legislature.
it depends if the
Like,
voters.
what's the big strategy here? Like, can we speculate about that?
I know, yeah, I know. So, I mean, look, well, I mean, this is what we said right at the beginning: is like it's commonly understood that the strategy is that the Libs know they're going to lose this election, but they need to be able to have enough of a comeback to have a chance at the next election. Obviously,
Mm.
now the thing is, it's very hard. Like, let's say if they only just get 3 seats for the Libs, 3 seats for the Nats, they come back with the exact same amount of seats that they did last time. Even if they can say, all right, we got a 10% swing, they still don't have the seats to show for it. So they're effectively coming back to the Australian people saying, okay, we didn't win anything, but still, look at this swing that we got. That means you should vote for us next time. I don't think the public's going to buy that. The public is just going to look at the raw number of seats and just say, no, like this is obliteration. And I'm not voting for a losing party like that. So that's what I think. I honestly don't think the swing is going to matter very much if they don't get the seats, and so far they haven't.
All right. Well, I'll respectfully disagree and say, yeah, okay, the seats may eventually fall to a landslide, but if they gain, they're just under the surface. Just wargaming this out, not saying I'm like suddenly pro libs or anything, but I'm just looking at this the battlefield strategy of what's being used here. It's like this could be conceivably spun as a positive development for the Liberal Party if they're trying to slowly claw their way back to power across multiple electoral cycles, where they go, as long as if they had the blowout of the seat count all being for ALP and there was no swing to the Libs whatsoever, that would be more embarrassing for them than what it
Oh, of
currently
course,
is.
yes,
That's what
of
I'm
course,
sort of looking at, is going, okay,
sure.
they may not win, but they've weakened the margins for many, many seats, or at least, put themselves back into contention, where, the tide's gone out. A lot of people are now going, yeah, we've had 4 years of this, but, maybe not everyone's willing to shift from one part to the other. Coming back down to earth here, it's like, well, does it fucking matter? No. Like the Liberals, Labor's still going to do what they're going to do. Liberals winning doesn't matter that much, not to Blackpool suddenly, but it's sort of like I realize I'm probably getting a bit too carried away with like micromanaging or reviewing all of these different things.
No, that's fine. You're kind of like the Anthony Green of this situation. Yeah. And by the way, it's Anthony Green's last state or WA election. You will never do another one.
Okay.
He said that he's actually retiring after the federal election, so that will be his last overall election
When's that?
coverage. Well, yeah, interesting
Or
you
is
asked that
it when
because they just announced, I believe it was a March 27 budget, and so that obviously means you can't have an election right after. So I think they've said that the earliest it can now be called is early May. So yeah, the earliest is 3rd of May, which is surprising. Most people were predicting an April and maybe even a March election. You know, they thought Albo was going to do it as early as he could, um, basically because of the fact that his polling numbers just keep trending down. So yeah, it's interesting he's left it that late. Might prove fatal for him.
Could be.
Okay, how about we haven't spoken a hell of a lot about the issues. We only covered a couple. Maybe we'll just have a look at some of the major promises that were um,
Oh yeah.
made throughout this campaign. Relying on the old ABC again.
Sure, why not?
Okay, so housing. So this is the one where I quizzed the Labor guy who came to my door on, and he really wasn't able to tell me very much. But anyway, Labor says that they're aiming to have social housing boosted by 1,000 homes per year, and that's at a cost of $1.5 billion. Yeah, look, I don't know if that's realistic, especially considering you've got so many building companies just going bust at the moment. So then the Nationals say they would be looking at developing land in the regions, uh, and that includes $1 billion to connect suitable land holdings to essential utilities like water and power. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty trademark Nationals policy where they want better infrastructure in the regions, and like when we were talking about Westralia at the beginning of the show here, like with the Nationals in party, we would look a little bit more like Westralia, with much better infrastructure out in these regional areas and encouraging local employment in the mines and the minerals, um, rather than this bloody fly in, fly out bullshit we have. Um, oh, look at that. So the Nationals also supported another $1 billion to build up to 1,000 new homes for government workers working in regional and remote areas. Yeah, so again, I guess that's just to kind of encourage them to live in the areas,
I kind
rather
of
than
really
just
don't want them to build more houses as much as that's sort of a wait what type attitude to have. But genuinely, Australia's big enough. We don't need more houses. We just need fewer foreigners, and the houses that are already here should be more than ample for the white population. But that's one of the reasons why I'm sort of against the idea of the party is going to build more houses for us. Like, no, please don't. Don't need any more. We're full.
yeah.
We're running out of
Yeah.
habitable over here.
Well, look, I've often said that, look, what I support is I support building out, but not building up. And, unfortunately, with so many of these projects, like definitely the social housing ones, they're just building big apartment blocks. And we just keep cramming people further in, become more densely populated all the time. I absolutely detest that idea.
Yeah,
But
I don't like the big Australia. I also don't like the idea of building out too much because you think about what the historical population density of this continent was. It's like the Australiana that we all like to piss, cry, and scream about having lost. It was when the country had 5 million people or
yeah,
thereabouts.
no, I get what you mean as well. And again, that's a problem when it's all just about living in Perth, isn't it? Because, I mean, the urban sprawl of Perth is enormous. It is massive.
Yeah,
Uh,
the urban sprawl is something that bothers me because you're chewing up a lot of space that in all honesty, I think is better if it's just left as
Yeah, but
as it
there's
is.
so
Like I
much.
miss
There's so much
suburbs need to
undeveloped
have
land.
just
Though.
like undeveloped land. I like that. I think it's nice.
You
It
like
makes
that?
cooler suburbs. Yeah, I do.
Well, okay, yeah, I guess I probably uh, I do like that as well. But it's much better than the alternative of actually just further subdividing the developed land that we do have, or worse still, just building a big apartment block and building up and up and smaller and smaller and smaller all the time. Bleh, I hate that. I've always hated even when I was a kid. I remember like watching shows like Seinfeld and Becker and saying, why do they live in these tiny little boxes? I don't get this. Why doesn't anyone in these shows have like a backyard with like a pet and a garden and stuff? I always hated that. Um,
Yeah,
and that's
the
and
whole
that's
idea of
I've said many
quarter
times that's
acre
what I
block.
like about Perth. Like because we have
Yeah.
rejected that. We rejected high density living in WA, and I think that's good. I think we should preserve it. Okay. Anyway,
But no, I don't like the high density living, and I also don't like the idea of building out too far because you shouldn't have to travel for more than an hour to just reach like the state forests or just uh, beyond below suburban conditions. Like it's I think it's without being a weirdo about it, it's like everyone should have access to like green nature spaces that aren't necessarily parks. Parks are great, parks are absolutely necessary, but it should be, maybe an hour's worth of drive to hit the hills or the great outdoors. I think it's just very
Hmm.
important for people's psychological development where if you grow up in these concrete jungles, you wind up being a fucking weirdo.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, we do have like little pockets of that in even within the metro area, which is nice, like Kalamunda, for example. That's definitely very nice, and I'd like to preserve that. I definitely agree with you there. Um, well, I guess we're our only option then, if we can't build out and we can't build up, then that means we have to develop the regions. That's really the only other alternative. And yeah, that's why I say like all of these policies that I'm reading, the Nationals have are the best. Uh, Maybe not the stuff about government housing, but certainly just about the overall level of facilities that they have in the bush and encouraging people to move into the regional areas a bit more. I definitely support that. And the Nationals they were higher up in my ballot paper, I'll say.
Mm, yeah, same. Just because I know it sounds almost contrite for us to say, but I'd like to see change. And as you know, it's J one J party is the same as another, but as far as chaos maxing goes, putting the Nationals further up there might be moderately entertaining for what it's worth. Just breaking out of the two-party dichotomy is more important than that's a case of it's good enough and there's no need to make perfect the enemy of good enough. I think by about now, everyone who is a white nationalist should have that stapled to the underside of their eyelids of we don't have the luxury of waiting for good enough. And there are many other reasons why some mythical NSDAP party simply will, that's not going to spring into existence. We have
No.
to we have to live and operate within the system that is around us. Postmodern it may be, but we still have to engage with reality at the end of the
That
day.
said, though, the Nationals were elevated to the position of opposition, though. So they
I know
were
that
actually,
was moderately entertaining, if nothing else.
yeah. Okay, so let's look at health. So the Nats again, they want to allocate $500 million to build and upgrade regional hospitals. Sure, um, can't argue with that. The Libs wanted $400 million on also improving regional hospitals, and another $275 million for adding transitional hospital beds. That's for patients ready for discharge. And this one, I don't know. This just sounds like just getting into the weeds of detail here, where they said
They don't want Labor's Women's and Babies Hospital to be at Fiona Stanley. Instead, they want it to be at the QE2 site in Nedlands. So they just don't agree with the location of it, but they still support it. As to the details on that, I don't know. So, as you can see, basically, when it comes to health policy, the Libs and Labor basically match each other. It's very much the same in the federal sphere. Remember when Albo announced his what was it, $8.5 billion upgrade of Medicare? I believe Peter Dutton matched that the very next day, and he's like, "Oh, and plus more. I'll match that, and I'll give you some extras as well." That said, Labor, if you look at polling on an issue by issue basis, health is actually one of the advantages for Labor. People generally think that Labor handle health better than the Libs. Education as well. But the Libs usually come up on top when it comes to general economic management. I don't know how they'd look nowadays, though. Both parties are just kind of, languishing. Okay, so see here, they also...
I was
Yeah,
gonna
go on.
finish up the health stuff, and then there's something that it was in one of the chats that I'd like to draw some attention to because it's moderately
Yeah,
interesting.
okay. So I'll just quickly...
So finish
Labor-
out that point. I didn't realize you had more to go.
Yep. So Labor promised $250 million to improve urgent care, including transforming Midland Health Campus Emergency Department and expanding the WA Virtual Emergency Department. Extra ADHD support is offered by both
East.
parties, Labor and Liberals here. So they want to support access to medication easier, and the Liberals are also promising more money to train medical professionals to alleviate doctor shortages. Yeah, the ADHD stuff has actually come up a bit lately. The Greens actually want the GPs to be able to diagnose ADHD and autism and prescribe medication. That just seems overboard to me, the idea of giving a GP that much power over diagnosis
Unlimited
and treatment
power.
of mental health. I get the idea is obviously, they want to cut wait times and slash prices because, an autism diagnosis, I assume, is actually quite expensive. But, it's not something to be taken lightly. And even though you might save money in the process, well, that could then mean that you're put into the NDIS and, you're suckling at the government's teat for the rest of your life, effectively, It's something like 1/3 of people on the NDIS receive support for autism. So it's a massive, massive drain on the economy. Okay. And then, see, again, they match each other on upgrades to Royal Perth Hospital, $80 million each, effectively. All right. Go on to whatever it was.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, something that was commented upon in the YouTube chat. Could you go back to the bit of what we're calling that, the main live results page for a tick? 1,000,001 tabs. Find Fremantle for me. And just expand that. Take that in. I'm not sure what to make of that at this point, but it looks like an independent's going to boot out the ALP from...
So that was, because I saw that one seat for other was predicted. So this must be...
If you just drill down onto that with the more details, open that in a separate tab, if you will. Because I'm just having a nose around this to see, because that's an excellent call out by Imagine on, that's just the username Imagine on YouTube, for bringing that to our attention, because I thought there you go. That's it's not going to be a comprehensive blowout, and the fact that the Labor Party is going to sort of see a couple of things whittled away I would imagine ideologically this independent is going to be, a fucking cunt hair's difference from the Greens.
I'm wondering if she's a teal.
Could be. It's what's the name? Kate Hewlett. Am I reading?
Yeah, I'm just reading about her now.
Yeah. Hewlett runs the Kate and Abel shop in Fremantle. Is that a typo? Is a photographer, writer. If you go, what the hell are you looking at? What have you got on screen right now? You're on the wrong tab. So if you go back to the West Australian one, other tab, then click on the more details on the right.
Oh, okay. So they wrote it in there.
And
Jeez.
scroll all the way down. Like scroll. Keep going. Keep going. There. Find. Scroll up a bit more. You went too far.
No shit.
There.
Fremantle.
Good
My
job,
God.
ABC. Is a photographer, writer, and artist, and sits on the City of Fremantle Destination Marketing Working Group.
The Y isn't even near the E on the keyboard. How the hell did that happen?
Oh, that's so dumb. So clearly she's done her grassroots activism and got all of those Frio fuckers to vote for her. I'm just having a look because if you click on the website, it delves into the profile of this person.
Yeah, I think I'm reading that actually on my other screen. Yeah, we're going to have to look at the policies because I'm sorry I did not research this woman prior.
Well, I don't think any of us expected this particular outcome, but climate change, government's job is to improve.
She has to be putting climate at the top and not being a green. It's got to be a fucking teal. Has to be.
I think you're right. Public spaces should be beautiful and safe. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Integrity. The revolving door between politics and industry, as well as the influence of big donors, media.
Climate 200. Where you got your money from.
This feeling has impacted the way people engage and contribute to political debate. My. Eroding trust and hope in our leaders and jeopardizing our country's future. Can you tell I've had a bit too much to drink tonight? The lack of transparency, integrity, and accountability in our political system impacts everything from climate action and the environment to housing and cost of living. Okay. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. Aren't the teals supposed to be like, not talking about things like that where they're like pro-business but pro-climate and pro-butt sex?
Yeah, but isn't that basically what it is? I mean,
she looks like she's just a splinter group from the Greens because I'm not seeing any pro-business comment. I thought you had to be pro-business in order to be a teal. She doesn't have that quality unless I'm missing other parts of her platform here.
Well, she was a small business owner. I don't know if that counts.
Fair deal on WA gas. It's under the priorities menu at the top there. Protect our domestic gas. Okay, I take it back. If she's talking about, we need to do things right by a fossil fuel industry, yeah, she's a teal.
Yeah, she's got to be.
Go.
So not surprising that she focused on the seat of Fremantle and that went her way. The Greens have held the seat of Fremantle before in WA.
It says 2001 by-election. So 2009, my apologies. If you go back to the main page, it actually has it there. Yeah.
Yeah, and but that woman ended up going independent. Do you know why? Because she was having an affair with Troy Buswell. Did you know that?
No.
that was enough. Like Buswell, he doesn't just have the brass snapping and the chair sniffing. He's just got this fucking laundry list of scandal behind him. But yeah, he was actually, I think he was the one having an affair. Like, he was married, but she wasn't. And then later on, when they broke up, in a very public and dramatic manner, she basically said that he was crazy and he was an angry alcoholic as well. So, yeah, that was very funny at the time. God, that's going back. I'll show you Here she is. Adele Carls. So, yeah, she was elected. Yeah, you're right. 2009, the seat of Fremantle. Initially elected as a Greens member, and then she sat as an independent. And yes, that was after she was banging Troy Buswell. Oh man!
Good job.
Oh, look, there's actually a whole section on it. See that? The Buswell affair. Oh man! Imagine that. That's taking up like nearly half of her Wikipedia profile. Imagine that, like defining your political career.
You got schlonged by a fucking. What party was he again? Buswell was Liberals,
Use the
right?
lips, liberals.
Oh, that's bipartisanship. You're getting fucked by one. Yeah, it's real crossbench activity right there.
I've got so many bloody tabs open. I don't know where I am now. Bloody turtles. Jeez. So
where are we at?
Labor's on 36 now.
36 and 23.4% of the vote counted. 16 seats in doubt, according to the IBC's prediction. Carine, Nedlands. So Nedlands should be absolutely no surprise, because that was like a Liberal Party stronghold, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And
Okay, so not
actually
really
funny,
a surprise there.
Yeah, but if you look at that one, look at it in the federal context. That's the seat of Curtin, which was yes, safe Liberal, and it was held by Julie Bishop, the former foreign minister and deputy Liberal leader. However, Curtin was the only seat that fell to the Teals in WA. So they have moved in that direction as well. Like Melbourne and Sydney, of course, are ahead of the curve in that regard. Like those safe Liberal seats, like Warringah, drifting towards the Teals. But it started in WA as well. Started with a seat of Curtin.
Sorry, I'm listening. Cottesloe. Okay, no, it looks like it's going to go, because I'm just looking for the ones that are grey now on the multimeter page, I guess. Yeah, too many tabs. Get rid of the Freo one. No, that's fine. Yes, so the Cottesloe count is 15.4%. Projection is that it will be the Liberals, but it's an independent who's giving them grief. So I think that's another one of your Teals making a noise for themselves out in the back paddocks.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just looking for. Yeah, go ahead.
Just they haven't officially called the independent seat though. Other is still coming up as 0, which is weird because Freeman. It looked like she actually had that by a fair margin, didn't she?
Yeah, it's 58.2% for her. So I don't know, and that's 15% of the vote counted for that. So they're probably. I'm not going to fall back to the whole tried and true. They don't let the broad masses know that you can vote for someone other than the two parties. But I'd be remiss not to mention that possibility if don't let word get out that you can actually vote in other ways.
Yeah, wow. Oh, ALP on 38. Or at least that's what it's saying on ABC News 24.
Yeah, 24.2% of the vote.
Sorry, should point out, obviously, people I'm sure can see there that the Nats have now won 4 seats.
4 seats.
So
yeah, that's funny. So could they retain their spot as the party then, perhaps?
Yes, that's looking like a very possible outcome.
Very funny outcome.
And currently, this means that the coalition as a whole only has 1 extra seat compared to the last election. So this is looking like another blowout.
I've noticed Gelton's being flagged as a 20% swing to the Nationals. I'm not sure what they were beforehand, just because that's green on the colour list there.
Oh, wow. That's massive.
What's the history of this?
Well, hold on.
What? Okay.
How could it say it's too early and she's got 61.5% of the vote?
Well, that's 61 or 14%.
Well,
14% counted, but
well,
it's 61%
yeah,
for her.
okay.
Looking
I
at the
guess.
history of the winning parties, it's mostly been ALP right up until the early 90s. Then it was Lib, then sort of flip-flopped around the place. But there's no history of it being anything other than the two-party preferred villains. So for this to suddenly flip to the Nats, yeah, that would be a bit different. Bunch of independents, Australian Christians, Liberal Party. Maybe it was just Labor because of the last election, and now it's going to go back to one of the country.
Wow, 38 seats.
Going to get 4 more years of LGBT DEI is how I will frame it.
Oh, damn. All right, I might as well just go through some of the other. Don't tell me I closed it. No. Some of the other promises. So we just did health. Let's move on to education. So, like I said, that's traditionally seen as Labor territory. People generally trust Labor more with education. Okay, the Greens. They wanted to, of course, fully fund the public schools by scrapping voluntary fees, as well as reducing class sizes and providing free school lunches. They say that'll cost $260 million. How in God's name are you going to reduce class numbers when we've got a teacher shortage? And
Magic, thoughts, wishes, and prayers, and all that other craft.
And part of the reason why we have a teacher crisis is because men are driven out of the profession. Education used to be very much male dominated occupation. It's completely flipped now. And I mean, especially in the cases of primary schools. I mean, is there even a such thing as a male primary school teacher anymore? Like,
Doubt it.
And you know, they're forced out because you know the curriculum is just always like feminized in every way. I mean, in terms of what they teach, in terms of teaching styles, and also, dare I say, in terms of favoring girls over boys in the classroom. And you know that's one of the reasons why I think ADHD diagnoses continue to go up.
Overdiagnosed. Yeah.
Yeah, because it starts off with a female teacher, you know, not liking that loud, disruptive boy in the class. And then he floats the idea with the parents, like, oh, I think your son has ADHD, you know, that's why he's a nuisance. And, you know, really it's just like a lot of the time, boys like that, they need a stimulating environment and have to sit down and be quiet and listen the whole time. Sometimes that's not the best environment for them. And so, yeah, that I think is forcing men to leave the profession. I would also just say that like classes are becoming increasingly disruptive because of the amount of non-whites in the class, and again, that's a direct result of the kind of policies that the Greens support. Greens effectively support open borders, and you know, like what triggers me the most about that is that you have white kids being bullied for being white. That's a very real thing. It happens
Yep.
when you get enough of these minority groups. It's certainly something that, you know, like has existed for a long time in America, where you get blacks ganging up on the white kids, but it's starting in Australia as well. And a lot of teachers end up quitting because they effectively can't control their classes. And sometimes it goes even further, where they've been assaulted by teachers. We've covered a couple of those stories before. So, okay, anyway, that's my long way of saying the Greens policies are fanciful there.
Yep.
Okay, so Labor's offering free kindy for all 4-year-olds. That would be $34 million. And, well, of course, Labor offering more free TAFE courses. This is one of the few things I agree with Labor on. I think free TAFE courses are a great thing because, generally speaking, we need to get more people into technical occupations, and there's no need to go to uni for it. There's no need to spend 3 or more years, slaving away, getting up a big HECS debt, when you could effectively learn on the job or just take a very quick 6-month or year-long course. And yeah, I think that definitely has dividends. So yeah, TAFE, for most of the courses anyway, I'd say offer them for free. Oh geez, whole bunch of stuff here. So let's go through. These are some of the more kind of novel promises that have been made. So for the Greens, reform of WA's family, domestic and sexual violence response system. Wow. So this would mean the Greens would work to ensure that there is a full reform of that system, as well as full funding for the services required to keep women and children safe. Yeah, so this was one actually, when it came up to the issue of violence against women and children. Well, I'll show you this story. Notice the demographic that is depicted here. Anyone would know that yes, definitely we've got we've got the second highest rate of domestic violence in Australia. Number one is the Northern Territory. And whenever you read any of these stories about, say, a woman who was just murdered by her husband or a boyfriend or something, I'm sorry, but they always look like this all the time. So yeah, this goes on to talk about, I believe, like Labor's commitment to having more women's shelters, for battered women, obviously, and children as well. So yeah, that is a big issue here. But like, God, you go through all this and they talk about all the community outreach programs and all that kind of crap. No, this is just violent Aborigines, okay? And you need to take a hardline policing approach to it. It's the only way to solve it.
So above 25% of the vote counted, and ALP projected to get at least 4 seats. I think we're just flogging paste at this point. Code word ivermectin.
God, so all right. Drive clean energy projects. Oh, geez. Okay, I'm sorry for saying that was a novel promise. That's obviously far from novel for Labor. And holy shit, $60 million. So that put into green energy projects. Labor's promising a housing innovation program. We already kind of covered that. Revitalizing Victoria Key precinct in Fremantle. Maybe that was their pitch to Freo voters to outmaneuver the independent, but that has obviously failed. And the Liberals promised to develop business. Was that business case for stage 2 of Albany Health campus? Okay, that's obviously some kind of medical school, I guess. Can't say I know too much about that. All right, let's see. What other stories have I got here? Oh yeah, he was an interesting one. Just bring it up. So this one is about a brewery. So it's a brewery on Aboriginal land. And the the Australian here say that this could blow up the Cook government's chance of retaining the seat of Mandurah at the state election. Was that right? The seat of Mandurah. Let's see how Mandurah's doing. Not too early, but 9.9% swing to the Libs. However, Labor so far is on 64.3%. So definitely trending in Labor's favour there. Okay, so the Labor candidate was pushing to allow a pub on the waterfront down in Mandurah. And oh dear, the park is registered under the state's Aboriginal heritage laws.
God
my
damn it.
God. So if you listen to the Racist Law, you'd know the story we covered of the farmer of just a property owner in Tujay. He actually went through a 2-year court battle. He spent over $100,000 in court fees, and then he ended up losing. So he had to pay, I think it was a $2,000 fine, and pay $5,000 in costs. So all up, it was like 110 grand. It cost this poor guy. You know what his crime was? He built a walkway over a creek on his own property. His own property. Like a lot of people were reporting it as a bridge. It wasn't even really that. It was just like this small little concrete walkway over a little patch of water on his own land. And that was because he violated Aboriginal heritage laws. He was said to have upset the rainbow serpent that apparently occupies that area of land. I'm not making any of this up. It's unbelievable what some of the provisions under this law are just outrageous.
Yeah.
They reckon. Okay, so yeah, they reckon that the leisure precinct in Mandurah attracts around 750,000 visitors a year. How about that? Now, the problem is a lot of the residents there are opposed to that brewery. So they've joined forces with the local Noongar elder. So it's not necessarily that they support, Aboriginal sovereignty over this area of land. It's just that they oppose the development for other reasons. Maybe it blocks out their view, or maybe it's noise pollution. Could be a number of things. But yeah, I don't think this is exactly something that stirs too many emotions with people. I don't think that they would really vote on that basis. And it definitely looks like Labor is going to retain that seat anyway. So, another issue. Oh god, here's a triggering one. So, talking about the Kimberley again, Kimberley voters seek ground-level solution in tough on-crime WA election.
Please don't arrest our Aboriginals, even though they're committing all these crimes.
Yes, is basically what that means. Yeah. So look, Labor, however, have really sort of maintained the status quo in terms of law and order in WA. Let's remember that Labor did actually open the controversial Unit 18. So we've only got one juvenile detention centre, kids prison, in other words, called Banksia Hill Detention Centre. And they had a problem with a particular cohort, and they tended to be 18-year-olds and sometimes even older. So these were, adults by that stage who had been given a juvenile sentence, but then that overlapped into their adult years. And some of them were so violent and misbehaved that basically they didn't have the resources to manage them at Banksia Hill. I mean, good way of illustrating that is that, like, the officers at Banksia Hill, they don't carry handcuffs, they don't carry capsicum spray, they don't carry batons, whereas a prison officer does. So it made sense to actually house them in Casuarina prison. So that's our big maximum security adult prison, and so those kids were sent there, or adults in some cases were actually sent there. That was actually where we got our first ever death in custody. So apparently a suicide. Some people dispute that, but yeah, there was one Aboriginal boy, or like half caste or whatever, who did take his own life there, or well, he died there. We'll just put it at that. Anyway, Labor were under tremendous pressure, albeit from a vocal minority. This was certainly not a popular issue, but they were under enormous pressure to close Unit 18 and to further reform juvenile justice in WA. They refused. It was interesting to see that Labor actually maintained a hardline view there. They said, no, these are extremely dangerous detainees. We believe that we're putting youth custodial officers at risk if we leave them to manage them in Banksia Hill. Therefore, they should be left in the maximum security adults prison. And they've done that. And look, when it's come down to usual policing practices, particularly in the northwest of our country, where we have huge hotspots of crime, because that's where we've got our Aboriginal population centred, Labor have continued with the same law and order policies that the Liberal Party had. They haven't worried, too much about diversion programs, as they're always called. In other words, alternatives to jail. So, yeah, I guess you could say to their credit, they actually did maintain that. And I think that's just because of the harsh reality of crime. Dare I say, they were also looking at the kind of stuff that was going on under Victorian Labor and Queensland Labor, where you started to see an increase in ethnic crime, like Africans stabbing to death 70-year-old grandmothers, which happened in Queensland. And I think Labor was looking at that kind of stuff, the rise in Sudanese crime in Victoria, etc., and saying, yeah, we don't want that to happen here. I think another thing that would have encouraged it would have been the voice referendum. If you suddenly had this enormous spike in Aboriginal crime, which funnily enough you did in the Northern Territory, I don't know if you remember that, like Alice Springs just went fucking off for a little while, and that's when they had to impose all of those curfews. But yeah, I think the WA Labor were a bit cleverer, the Northern Territory Labor, than Queensland Labor, than Victorian Labor. And they said, no, as soon as we start taking the soft approach, Aboriginal crime basically goes out of control. There's no doubt about that. Which is why you always end up reading these bloody stories on the ABC. Voters seek ground-level solutions on tough on crime WA election. So, I mean, they're right. Both parties have been saying that they maintain that tough on crime approach. That is good. But you see this, they go through, like, they profile these various Aboriginal kids and they talk about how their future's been destroyed because they come in contact with the criminal justice system and all this crap. And then you see here, they talk about a strategy promised in 2017, supplemented by increased policing. Of course, they couldn't do it without that. And it says targeted crackdowns as crime grew into a significant safety issue across the region's communities. Yeah, I think back then, that was at the time where those bloody, those videos, they would basically record themselves like stealing cars and stuff. and then they would post them, and they would essentially act as challenges. Like, can you go out and steal more cars than me that night? So yeah, they've had to. Oh, that's right. Don't they call them crimfluencers?
Yep, I
There's
remember
actually
that phrase.
yeah, a crimfluencer. So now, obviously, social media do crack down quite hard on that, and I believe they were biggest on TikTok. So Aboriginal juveniles very much into the TikTok. Oh my god.
We're at 29% of the vote. Labor are projected to lose a third seat. Not sure where I'm seeing that. The pages are
Yeah.
inconsistent.
So the Libs are now on 4. So the coalition means they've got 2 more seats than what they had. So prospects looking ever so slightly better for them, but not much. And ALP on 41.
Still holding firm at a 10% swing to the LNP, which again it's going to be a blowout, but it's like the tide is receding for them. The tide is receding for Labor. The high of the COVID years is well and truly behind them, I would say. Now they actually have to, impress people or impress their base.
Yeah, I mean, not that Roger Cook had to do much to impress the base in the past 2 years. I honestly just think he was riding on the popularity of the Labor Party brand in WA. But man, going by these results now, the Labor Party brand is still very much in good shape. And, because this is such a thumping win,
what they'll use the time with. Yeah.
It really does look like 4 terms of Labor is possible, looking at this.
Yeah, I wonder what they'll use the advantage for. Rather, the extra time, sorry.
Well, I mean, look,
when you can govern freely like this, and you're already on like overtime plus.
Yeah, well, look,
what do you do with yourself?
That bloke who came to my door, one of the things he bragged about was WA apparently having the toughest gun laws in the whole country. That seems to be something they're very proud of. And of course, they're even cracking down at the federal level. They're trying to make that national registry. So whatever guns and ammunition you've got, they've all got to be registered. Yeah, they've added to the list of banned firearms. So rapid release or push button firearms. So they'll put it on the banned list. And the gun lobby is basically saying that they weren't consulted about any of this. Well, does that surprise you? I mean, of course, they don't need to talk to you about that. And, the gun lobby, unfortunately, in Australia is nothing like the gun lobby in America. The NRA is actually very effective at, letting people purchase and own guns. They're not so good at defending people when they use them in self-defense. But here in Australia, they're just shit on all fronts. Even when it comes to, even if you're just like a farmer, you own a big patch of land, they're still very restrictive on what kind of guns and ammunition you're allowed to have.
Yeah, I'm not sufficiently well informed on the whole gun thing in terms of like the intricacies of what is and isn't.
Yeah,
legal.
well, look, not too long ago, they had further restrictions. So there was a fewer amount of guns you were allowed to own, and also less ammunition as well. And of course, you've got to register all of that stuff too, so the government knows exactly what you've got.
Yep.
It was funny, actually. That was actually spurred on by this guy who had like this. It was almost like a secret compartment, like under his floor. I remember me and Knowlesy covered it. Like, if you move the couch, you could actually like go down into this little basement area, and he just had it fitted out just with all these fucking rifles. It was like it was real survivalist stuff, you know. Like this guy was waiting for for the fucking for the FEMA to come and put him in a box. But yeah, here in the burbs, though, I mean, yeah, we just never hear about guns, I guess. All right. What else we got? Oh, so we've got one here from the Libs. Let's see what it was. Oh, man. Okay. I forgot about this one. So look at this. This is about Thomas Bruff again. Remember who he is?
Yeah.
The guy who linked pedophiles to the LGBT movement. Also, the guy who said he wants to reform our abortion laws.
Based.
So, as you can tell here, the caption says Tom Bruff is a doctor, shooter, and Liberal Party candidate.
All right.
And what does it says here? So he says, "Oh God, this is unusual." Dr. Bruff suggests doctors will help potential gun owners through the health check process to ensure they can have access to firearms. Under the changes, those seeking a gun license in WA will have. Oh, that's right. This was part of the reforms that WA Labor brought in recently, which was that, yeah, you'd have to pass a mental and a physical health check. Okay. Do you really need to be that fit to own a gun and discharge a firearm?
I think so. I mean, you got to have like a degree of upper body strength around the arms and shoulders, or at least the bits that can handle the recoil of whatever firearm you happen to be operating. So I think there's just cause to say, yeah, you can't be a complete noodle-armed langlet trying to manhandle a chain cannon or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah. Well, he looks like he's physically able. He looks like he knows what he's doing there with that rifle. Yeah, so it says here, so he had to walk back comments where he suggested a posse of rural doctors would help potential gun owners navigate WA's strict firearm laws. Oh my God. Geez, he just kept saying shit that would grab these headlines in the ABC. And, well, that makes me very curious. How's he going? So he's got an 11.4% swing to him, but too early. Yeah, it's actually a pretty small margin right now. He's on 50.3. Oh, and by the way, they look like they're kind of gearing up to do the speeches now. On my other monitor, I'm keeping an eye on ABC News 24.
I'm just doom scrolling Twitter for silly shit at this point, but
oh, wait a minute.
No.
You've got...
How does it feel to have secured this on your own leadership stamp tonight?
Well, there's still votes to be counted, but we're obviously really pleased at the early indications of the vote. Thank you very much.
Not quite declaring a victory there, Rita Saffioti. A little bit cautious, but...
Okay, so obviously that was not a victory speech, but they caught him like just as he was getting into the car there. But as they said at the end, he was not declaring victory. Why? Dude, what do you want? 41 seats now?
43. And 30.7% of the vote counted. 7 seats in doubt. 3 are going. Seats that are changing that look to be fairly swinging back to the Libs. Karine, Kalamunda, Netherlands. Fremantle is 34% for the. Sorry, you want to butt in there?
No, sorry, I just had the audio going.
Oh.
Go on.
I'm still bemused by Geraldton possibly swinging to the Nationals, but it's still saying only 16% counted. Just because that's the only green one left on the contention list.
Yeah.
It'd be funny if it did, because there's no history of that having happened for Geraldton. So it would be moderately amusing.
All right, let me just keep pushing through some of the
other
issues.
Carry on. I have nothing intelligent to say.
You know, the other big news today was not that you'll care, Khyber, but
Go on.
you know the band Mastodon?
Mm-hmm. I'm aware of their existence.
One of my favorite bands. I love them. And one of my favorite guitarists, Brent Hines, who's actually leaving the band. And this is called a big shock, actually. And Brent Hines, anyone who knows about the band, they might know that. Do you know the band Dream Theater, Khyber?
Nope.
Heard of them? Okay, Dream Theater are like a progressive metal / rock band. They do long songs, long instrumental breaks, and they present quite nerdy. You know, like they're very well trained musicians, very prim and proper. And once Brent Hines was asked, like, what makes Mastodon cooler than Dream Theater? And he said, well, we don't have a Chinese girl playing bass. Because in Dream Theater, they've got an Asian guy who plays bass. So he called him a Chinese girl. And he also said that they're gay. He said, like, especially their lead singer. He's got the whole opera thing going on. He's like the way they look, the way they sound, they're just gay. Now, that was quite a while ago. I remember I read that in like Guitar World magazine or something. And geez, that would be nearly 20 years ago now that I read that. That was back when the Blood Mountain album had just come out, which is probably their best album. But yeah, the thing with Brent Hines is he actually said that he doesn't really like metal music. And when you listen to a lot of Mastodon's work, you hear stuff in it that sounds like kind of bluegrass or kind of sounds like something out of the movie Deliverance, like played on a banjo. And that's because he does like chicken picking style on acoustic guitar and banjo. And he would actually translate that onto electric guitar with a lot of distortion and basically make metal out of it. But that was one of the things that made Mastodon really unique, was like this guy who like basically wasn't a metal guitarist and taking the techniques that he learned and kind of transposing them into a metal context. And it worked really well. He was also one of the lead singers. So like they have 3 lead singers in Mastodon. Very rare for bands to do that. So yeah, it was real surprising that he's leaving. And I can see Libby Medham is about to do her concession speech, and she has actually officially conceded defeat. Well, yeah.
Which electorate was she in? Libby
Medham.
Refresh my memory.
I'm sorry, I don't know. Hold on. She looks like she might be doing her.
So put it on screen. Give us a
ethic mountain to climb.
These are difficult speeches to give, no doubt about it. And there'll be some disappointment in that room. But Libby Medham, I think, is going to be introduced before we hear from her. But this is not the outcome she was expecting.
No, not at all. I mean, I don't think realistically she had a victory speech prepared.
No.
But this is not a good night for the Liberals by any measure.
No, it's certainly not. Well, as Steve Thomas was telling us earlier, even getting back to the 2017 result at this stage, anyway, I mean, things may change dramatically in the pre-poll count to come in, but from what we're seeing so far, this is going to be worse than that 2017 landslide win for Labor. This goes down at the moment, at least, as looking like their second worst result after 2021.
Very difficult speech to give, and she's never lost hope throughout the campaign, has always maintained we can win, unlike her predecessor, Zach Kirkup, who conceded before the last election. Libby Mettam has been fighting the fight.
And she's worked hard, from all accounts. She's
worked very hard. She's not the official opposition leader, so she hasn't had a government driver. She's been driving herself down and back from her regional electorate.
So we did give her a driver for the campaign.
For the campaign, yes, but for the past couple of years, no. I think everyone can agree she's worked very hard in that difficult position, but.
And not a united team for a small team, but not always united.
No, that's it. She had to stare down her detractors. At the end of last year, there was movement for Basil Zemplis to come into that position early.
All right, let's listen in. Let's
hear from her now.
We'd like to invite you to the stage. Please welcome Steve Martin, the Deputy Leader of the Liberal Party.
Hey guys, thanks very much, Sandra. It's wonderful to be here. It's been a tough day, guys, but we're going to get a great result in Cottesloe, and it's my great pleasure to introduce the hardest working woman in Western Australian politics. She's really quite tough as well. But it's a wonderful privilege to have served with Libby for the last couple of years. She's left nothing on the table. It's not the result we wanted, but it's my great privilege to introduce Libby Mettam. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Sandra. And thank you to everybody here that has been here supporting Sandra Brewer and the Western Australian Liberal Party. A few moments ago, I made a phone call to our Premier, Roger Cook, to congratulate him on an emphatic win for the Western Australian Labor Party. We know.
Concession speech. All right, we're going to go to Roger Cook now, who's not going to wait for the end of that concession speech from Libby Mettam. He is going to declare victory, and we'll listen to the Premier in what is an exciting moment for him and the Labor Party here in WA.
Good evening, friends. To our supporters in this room and around the great state of Western Australia. To all the members of the WA community watching at home, good evening. Thank you to Barry Winmar for his warm welcome to country early this evening. And can I take my opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we are meeting tonight, the Wadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. But of course, people are watching this election from right around this great ancient state of ours, and we acknowledge all First Nations people in the state of Western Australia. Friends, today, Western Australia has voted for a future which is made in WA. Now, earlier this evening, I received a call from Libby Mettam. She offered her congratulations to our WA Labor team for being elected to form a new government and wish us well. I congratulated Libby on the tireless work she put into this campaign on the campaign trail. And look, she's a decent person. who, like most of us who go into public life, does it for the right reasons. And I look forward to working with her and the Leader of the National Party in the Parliament very shortly. Friends, for 8 years, our WA Labor team has delivered sensible, stable government focused on strong financial management. We relentlessly pursue the creation of jobs and the delivery of infrastructure and services that people need. And at times of global uncertainty, the WA community has put its trust in our WA Labor team for the next 4 years. And while we celebrate tonight, we are humble. We do not take that trust for granted. We will work to repay this trust every single day. The cost of living challenges created by global inflationary pressures are not of our government's making, but we will continue to provide cost of living relief where we can. Things like our household battery rebate, expanding free kindy and free TAFE, delivering another round of the student assistance payments, and cheaper fares for public transport in Perth and in our regions. But WA's Labor's vision for Western Australia goes beyond this. We will work every day to ensure WA's economy remains the strongest in the nation, and that there is no better place in the world to get a quality job. By backing our resources industry, diversifying our economy for the future, and making more things here. WA Labor understands that having the strongest economy in the country means more people want to live here. Not only do we have the strongest economy in the country, we have the fastest growing population. And this creates pressures in areas like housing and health. We have heard the concerns of Western Australians, and our new government will never stop working towards ensuring every Western Australian has a decent home and that we live in the healthiest state in the country. And that no matter where you live, in our suburbs, in our towns, in our remote communities, all Western Australians will have access to the services they need. Friends, every election victory involves a lot of hard work, and I want to thank everyone who has contributed. To our State Secretary and Campaign Director, Ellie Whittaker, thank you. To my staff, thank you. To my outgoing Chief of Staff and incoming parliamentary colleague, Daniel Pastorelli, thank you. To our former Premier, Mark McGowan, thank you for your service to our state, your friendship and ongoing support. And to our Deputy Premier, Rita Sapiotti, thank you for your tireless work for our state and our movement. And to my other Cabinet colleagues and Cabinet and parliamentary colleagues, thank you as well. And on today, which also happens to be International Women's Day, I pay special tribute to all our amazing female candidates who have campaigned across this great state. Now, I want to make special mention of our WA Labor members who have lost their seats tonight. Look, politics is a tough business. You have to reapply for your jobs every 4 years, and sometimes you're not successful. Each and every outgoing member of our WA Labor team has made an outstanding contribution to both their electorate and our state. Thank you for your service, and all the best for the future to you and your families. Thank you to our army of red shirts all around the state. From our branches and our unions. You are the most incredible movement of volunteers a political party has ever seen. Thank you. Thank you for every phone call you made and every door you knocked. But I want to pay special tribute to my family tonight. Like every family of a politician, they put up with a lot. They give a lot. So, Carly, Toby and Isabel, thank you for everything. Thank you for believing in me, putting up with me. I love you. Friends, enjoy tonight because we get back to work tomorrow, putting together a new government that builds upon everything that we've achieved together to date, that tackles our challenges with determination, that pursues every opportunity with excitement and enthusiasm. We are fortunate to live in the greatest place on earth. But our success isn't due to luck alone. It's due to the hard work of all Western Australians. Team WA. And as a team, we achieve so much more together than we do alone. And each member of our WA Labor team looks forward to rolling up our sleeves and getting back to work for each and every Western Australian. To create jobs, to deliver the infrastructure and services we need, to make WA a renewable energy powerhouse and restore pride in the words, made in WA. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. I just simply have to point out the fact that Libby Metham got enormously mic cucked just then.
Yeah, true.
We were just right smack bang in the middle of her concession speech. In fact, she had just talked about how she had congratulated Roger Cook on his win, and then oh wait, Roger Cook's speech is starting. I rolled to her. So,
very funny. No, just because it's fresh on my mind. You say getting back to work tomorrow, dude. Tomorrow's a Sunday. Government. I mean, yeah, sure, government works on a Sunday, but no, I just find that obviously it's a hollow platitude. Two things that are worth having a chuckle about before we sign off for the evening. The seat of Churchlands, where Mr. Basil Zemplis is currently being lightly prodded. So yeah, I wonder how much.
This I definitely was not expecting. I thought this would actually be quite a comfortable win for Basil. I really did. And he was actually, they had this projected before as a Liberal victory, I remember. And so obviously it's changed since the count further.
The count is just updated. You may have spotted that on the live stream.
Yeah,
it was 20 to 40%. So what's that, 6% swing? They had it by 1.6 the last time. Something else that is still there on the screen for those of you looking at the website, the updated count for a lot of those other suburbs right when the speeches started, because for a while there it was updated 1 or 2 minutes ago. Now it's updated 46 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago. I just find that funny that the live updates have trickled down to a halt where it's clear that we don't need to do the nail biting shit anymore. So I just wonder if the interns at the ABC have either gotten bored or they're done for the night.
Yeah, wow. So, I mean, look, in terms of just to rate my own level of prediction here, I, of course, did predict that Labor were going to win this, but obviously you don't need to be Nostradamus to predict such an obvious finding. But where I was wrong, though, was I honestly thought that the coalition would claw back a
bit
lot
more.
more than what they have here. So
I still say they have. I mean, we're arguing about shit that doesn't matter for the umpteenth
two
time.
seats.
For the benefit.
Well, yeah, I know you're going to mention the swings, which yes, in many
The
of those
swings
seats,
and the under the hood. You know, the fact that Labor have won, they may have won all of these seats, but that's only by less of a solid margin than 2021. And I think that is significant in terms of, okay, they haven't achieved the blowout victory that they wanted, but they've got something to build upon next time. Now, what does that mean for us? 5/5 of fuck all. But hey, we're here to just gawk at all of this other shit at the end of the day. But I think it's, I lightly disagree with the idea. Yes, it was a blowout, but it's, if you dig beneath a bit more of the surface here, it's not the worst result possible. Yeah, if it was a complete repeat of 3 years ago or 3 or 4 years ago, then I might agree with that. But you know, they're going to be looking at this and going, okay, we've clawed back a little bit, and the margins are less close on many of the seats than they were the last time around. The system is going back to the two-party stable chaos level, as opposed to the lopsided blowout that we saw from, you know, McGowan's tenure. And it's also very funny to see that Roger Cook did a deliberate shout out just to sort of reinforce in the minds of the electorate that he is the not heir apparent, but the successor to Roger Cook. Because if you remember at the time, I think it was even you that pointed this out, that all McGowan was doing for campaign stuff was just being photographed next to other ALP members, because I think it was you who said people were going to their local voting booths saying, how do I vote for Mark McGowan? Even though McGowan wasn't necessarily the candidate in that seat, where there were just droves of people who were like, I want to vote for big figurehead. And the ALP had this weird problem of convincing people, well, you vote for our candidate, and that's like a proxy vote for Cook. So they're still playing into that angle, which is interesting. It's a winning move, of course.
That story, I actually got that from Shane Love, who up to now, well, still is the official opposition leader of the National Party. He was saying that when he was campaigning in his own seat, he said some women came up to him and said, how do we vote for Mark McGowan? And he's like, well, he's not running in this seat, but you can vote Labor. And then he showed them how to vote Labor. So, kind of sad story. But yeah, look, just in terms of representation, though, in the Parliament, in the lower house, the coalition are left with 2 extra seats compared to last time, 4 each. So it's really, just in terms of representation alone, it is very, very small. But also, if you look at the swing as a whole, we can see here it's a 7% swing to the Liberals, which is just so far behind the mark of what they needed. So, yeah, I know what you're saying. Even in those individual seats, there were some pretty whopping swings. But, like, I don't know, the greater scheme of things, it doesn't really look all that significant to me.
Oh, no, it's definitely not significant from our perspective. I'm just looking at the fact that all of these seats that are in doubt are showing, you know, swings to the Liberals where, okay, they may not necessarily win the seat, but the lopsided margin is gone. Like, that's all I'm calling out with this. Although I will say Geraldton, Fremantle, and Churchlands, I'm going to check on those tomorrow morning and just lightly eyeball those, just because they've sort of been a bit weird, or there's something significant to them. As in, they stand out, is all I'm saying. Yeah, Churchlands, because again, you didn't, neither of us expected that. Fremantle, if there's an independent that gets in there, that'll be funny. Geraldton, if it actually goes to the Nationals, I think that would be a first, if I'm understanding what I'm reading here.
Okay, yeah.
So well, look, that, I guess.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll leave it there, guys. So thank you for joining us in what was, well, look at that, over a 3-hour
3 hours,
stream.
super
I was really
show.
worried we wouldn't have enough content. But yeah, look, in terms of all the aftermath of this, we'll have the show Monday, wrap it up, wait to get ready.